Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, hello. And thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to sit down with you and talk about one of the most epic, breathtaking, and unforgettable cinematic experiences of all time. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, the incredible 2002 film that continues the legendary journey through Middle-earth. If you have ever felt like the world needs a little more magic, more courage, more friendship, and more jaw-dropping adventure, then trust me, this is the movie you absolutely have to watch. Whether you are a longtime fan of fantasy or someone who has never picked up a book in this universe, The Two Towers will pull you in, wrap you up in its vast landscapes, and leave you feeling inspired, moved, and completely in awe of what storytelling can achieve on the big screen. Today, I am going to take you through everything you need to know about this masterpiece. The director, the cast, the massive production, the groundbreaking effects, the music, the awards, the box office numbers, all the behind-the-scenes magic, and most importantly, exactly why this film still stands as one of the greatest sequels and one of the greatest films ever made, without spoiling a single moment of the story for those of you who have not seen it yet. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's dive deep into why The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers deserves a prime spot on your watch list right now. Let's start at the very beginning. This film is directed by the visionary Peter Jackson, a filmmaker from New Zealand who fell in love with J.R.R. I had Tolkien's books when he was a kid and dreamed of bringing them to life in a way no one had ever done before. Peter Jackson, along with his incredible writing partners Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Stephen Sinclair, crafted the screenplay based on the second volume of Tolkien's epic novel, The Lord of the Rings. The whole trilogy was actually filmed at the same time between October 1999 and December 2000, which was an absolutely insane undertaking. Imagine shooting 3 huge movies back-to-back in the same locations with the same massive cast and crew. That kind of dedication and planning is rare in Hollywood, and it shows in every single frame of The Two Towers. The production companies were New Line Cinema and Wingnut Films, and they took a huge risk on this project because at the time, fantasy films on this scale were not the guaranteed blockbusters they are today. But Peter Jackson and his team believed in the material so deeply that they poured their hearts and souls into it, and the result is pure cinematic gold. Now, the budget for The Two Towers was around $94 million, which in 2002 was a serious amount of money, especially when you consider how much of it went into creating an entire believable world from scratch. And what did they get in return? A worldwide box office of over $944 million during its initial theatrical run and re-releases, making it the highest-grossing film of 2002 and one of the biggest successes in movie history at that point. That is nearly 10 times its budget back. Talk about a return on investment. People lined up around the block, theaters were packed, and audiences walked out feeling like they had just lived through something monumental. The film runs for 179 minutes in its theatrical version, which flies by because every second is packed with emotion, beauty, and excitement. There is also an extended edition that clocks in at 235 minutes, adding even more depth and richness for those of us who can never get enough of this world. And yes, I highly recommend checking that out too once you have seen the theatrical cut. Let me introduce you to the extraordinary ensemble cast that brings all of this to life, because the performances here are what make the story feel so real and so human. Elijah Wood returns as the young hobbit Frodo Baggins, and carrying a burden that you can literally see weighing on him through his expressive eyes and quiet determination. Sean Astin is absolutely perfect as Samwise Gamgee, Frodo's loyal gardener and best friend. His warmth, his courage, and his unwavering heart make him one of the most beloved characters in film history. Andy Serkis delivers a revolutionary performance as Gollum, providing both the voice and the motion capture movements for this complex, tragic creature. The way he switches between personalities is mesmerizing and groundbreaking. Ian McKellen is majestic as Gandalf, now returned in an even more powerful form, bringing wisdom, power, and that gentle humor we all love. Viggo Mortensen completely owns the role of Aragorn, the reluctant heir who steps up with quiet strength and sword skills that will leave you cheering. Orlando Bloom is the graceful elven archer Legolas, moving with such elegance and precision that every arrow shot feels like poetry. John Rhys-Davies brings both humor and heart as the dwarf Gimli, and he also voices the ancient, wise Treebeard in a way that makes you believe trees can talk and feel. Then we have Christopher Lee as the fallen wizard Saruman, delivering every line with chilling authority. Bernard Hill steps in as King Theoden of Rohan, and his transformation is powerful and moving. Miranda Otto is fierce and heartbreaking as Éowyn, showing both vulnerability and incredible bravery. Karl Urban is intense as Éomer, David Wenham brings quiet dignity as Faramir, and Brad Dourif is wonderfully slimy as Grima Wormtongue. We also get wonderful returns from Liv Tyler as Arwen, Hugo Weaving as Elrond, Cate Blanchett as Galadriel, Billy Boyd as the cheeky Pippin, Dominic Monaghan as the clever Merry, and even Sean Bean appearing in key flashbacks as Boromir. The supporting cast is stacked too. Craig Parker as Haldir, John Bach, Bruce Hopkins, Nathaniel Lees, and so many more talented actors who make every corner of Middle-earth feel alive. And did you know Peter Jackson himself has a fun little cameo? So many familiar faces from the crew and families of the cast pop up in the big battle scenes, adding that extra layer of love and authenticity. What really sets the Two Towers apart is the production design and the way every tiny detail was obsessed over to make Middle-earth feel like a real place you could step into. Filming happened entirely in New Zealand, and the locations are stunning. The rolling plains and mountains of the South Island, Dry Creek Quarry, where they built the massive Helms Deep set with its towering walls, gates, and ramps that could actually be destroyed for the cameras. They constructed the Golden Hall of Edoras on top of Mount Sunday in Canterbury, taking 6 whole months just for those thatched roof buildings and the detailed interiors at Stone Street Studios. A huge 1:4 scale miniature of Helms Deep, 50 feet wide, was used for those epic wide shots and explosive moments, blending perfectly with the live-action footage. Weta Workshop, led by Richard Taylor, created thousands of practical props, weapons, and costumes, each Rohirrim armor inspired by ancient Germanic and Anglo-Saxon designs, each sword hand-forged and taking 3 to 6 days to make. The elves got beautiful autumn-colored armor, and the Uruk-hai had specially designed crossbows and terrifying armor that made them look unstoppable. On the visual effects side, Weta Digital doubled their staff to 260 people and created 73 minutes of digital effects across 799 shots. The star of the show is definitely Gollum. Andy Serkis performed on set in a motion capture suit. They filmed every scene twice, once with him and once without, then rotoscoped and hand-animated his face using his own expressions. The skin tones alone took 4 hours per frame to render, and the split personality moments are achieved through clever camera angles and voice work that still holds up perfectly today. Treebeard was brought to life with a 14-foot-tall practical puppet covered in polyurethane bark, shot against blue screen, and then enhanced digitally. Each frame took up to 48 hours to render. These techniques were revolutionary in 2002, and they still look better than a lot of CGI we see in modern blockbusters. The music is another reason you have to experience this film. Howard Shore composed, orchestrated, and conducted one of the most beautiful and powerful film scores ever written, performed by the London Philharmonic Orchestra, London Voices, and incredible soloists including soprano Isabel Barak-Darian and Irish fiddler Dermot Crean on the Hardanger fiddle. The themes weave together across the entire trilogy, but in The Two Towers, you get new motifs for the people of Rohan, for the ancient forests, and for the growing darkness that feels both terrifying and hopeful at the same time. The score was recorded at the legendary Abbey Road Studios, and it earned Howard Shore a well-deserved Grammy for Best Score. Every time the music swells during a wide landscape shot or a moment of quiet reflection, you feel it in your chest. It is that good. Cinematography by Andrew Lesnie is breathtaking, with sweeping helicopter shots over New Zealand's mountains and forests that make you feel tiny in comparison to the world on screen. The editing by Michael Horton keeps the multiple storylines moving at the perfect pace, never letting the tension drop. Sound design and mixing were so impressive that the film won an Academy Award for Best Sound Editing, and it was nominated for Best Sound as well. Makeup and hair by Peter Owen, Peter King, and the Weta team turned actors into completely believable hobbits, elves, dwarves, Bai and orcs with prosthetics that look natural even under harsh sunlight. When The Two Towers hit theaters on December 18th, 2002 in the United States and December 19th in New Zealand, after a glamorous premiere on December 5th at the Ziegfeld Theatre in New York, critics and audiences lost their minds in the best way. It holds a 95% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes from nearly 300 reviews, with the consensus praising how it balances spectacular action with deep emotional storytelling. Metacritic gave it an 87 out of 100, and CinemaScore audiences gave it a rare A grade. It won 2 Academy Awards out of 6 nominations, Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing, and was nominated for Best Picture, which was huge for a fantasy sequel. At the BAFTAs, it took home Best Costume Design and Best Special Visual Effects. And it swept the Saturn Awards for Best Fantasy Film, Best Supporting Actor for Andy Serkis, Best Costume, and Best Makeup. It also won a Hugo Award, an Empire Award for Best Picture, and even MTV gave Andy Serkis the award for Best Virtual Performance. Years later, in 2025, it ranked number 43 on the New York Times Reader's Choice for the best movies of the 21st century, and the massive battle sequence is still called one of the greatest ever put on screen by outlets like CNN. So why exactly should you watch The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers right now in 2026? First, because it is pure escapism done at the highest possible level. When you press play, you are instantly transported to a world that feels lived in, ancient, and alive. The landscapes are real, the costumes have weight, the weapons look like they could actually cut, and the creatures move with purpose. Second, the themes of friendship, loyalty, sacrifice, standing up against overwhelming evil, and finding hope in the darkest times resonate just as strongly today as they did 24 years ago. You will laugh with the hobbits, feel your heart race during the action, and maybe even shed a tear or two during the quieter, more emotional moments. Third, the performances are career-defining. Viggo Mortensen became a star because of this role, Andy Serkis changed the entire industry with motion capture, and the chemistry between the entire cast feels like they really lived these adventures together for years, because they basically did. Fourth, it raised the bar for what fantasy films could be. Before this trilogy, big fantasy movies were often cheesy or low-budget. Peter Jackson proved you could have emotional depth, philosophical weight, groundbreaking effects, and massive scale all in one package. And that paved the way for everything from Game of Thrones to The Witcher to modern Marvel and Star Wars shows that try to capture even a fraction of this magic. Fifth, watching it today on a big screen or even a good home setup with surround sound is an event. The extended edition on Blu-ray or 4K Ultra HD looks and sounds better than ever, with new special features that let you peek behind the curtain at the incredible craftsmanship. And let's be honest, in a world full of quick-cut action movies and endless franchises that sometimes feel formulaic, The Two Towers reminds us what patient, passionate, respectful adaptation looks like. Tolkien's world was treated with love and care. Every prop, every line of dialogue, every musical note serves the story and the characters. You will walk away not just entertained, but genuinely moved, and maybe even a little changed, wanting to be a better friend, a little braver, a little more hopeful. If you have never seen it, do yourself the biggest favor and watch it tonight. Start with the theatrical version to get the full cinematic punch, then treat yourself to the extended cut when you are ready for even more. If you have seen it before, watch it again. I promise you will notice new details, feel new emotions, and fall in love all over again. This is the kind of movie that deserves to be experienced with friends, with family, or even alone on a quiet evening when you need to remember that good can still triumph, and that ordinary people, or hobbits, can do extraordinary things. If this is your first time here, a huge warm hello, and thank you for clicking play today. I'm seriously buzzing with excitement because we're diving deep into one of the absolute pinnacles of cinema, a film that redefined epic storytelling, visual spectacle, and pure heart-pounding adventure. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers from 2002. Picture this. You hit play, the screen fills with those sweeping New Zealand vistas, Howard Shore's score swells like a wave crashing over you, and suddenly you're not just watching a movie. You're living in a world so vast, so detailed, so emotionally real that hours fly by like minutes. If you've ever craved a story that makes you believe in courage again, in unbreakable friendships, in standing tall when everything feels impossible, this is it. This isn't just a sequel. It's the middle chapter that takes everything great about the first film and cranks it up to legendary levels, all without ever losing the human or hobbit touch that makes you care so deeply. Today, as your passionate narrator and fellow fan, I'm going to walk you through every layer of why The Two Towers deserves to be rewatched right now in 2026, why it still feels fresh and powerful nearly a quarter century later, and every juicy detail, from the insane production scale to the cast's dedication, the groundbreaking tech, the music that gives you chills, the awards it swept, the behind-the-scenes magic, recent rankings, and even those little trivia gems that make rewatches even more fun. No spoilers here. I promise we're keeping the story's heart safe so first-timers can jump in blind. This is going to be a long, loving love letter to the film, perfect for your 25-minute video script. Grab a snack, settle in, and let's journey back to Middle-earth together. Directed once again by the unstoppable Peter Jackson, who co-wrote the screenplay with Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Stephen Sinclair, adapting the second book in J.R.R. Tolkien's masterpiece Trilogy. What's mind-blowing is that all three films were shot back-to-back from October 1999 to December 2000 in one continuous marathon production. That meant the cast and crew lived in this world for over a year straight. Costumes, accents, prosthetics, massive sets, everything locked in so the continuity feels seamless. New Line Cinema and Wingnut Films took a massive gamble on fantasy at that scale. Big-budget epics like this weren't common blockbusters yet, but Jackson's vision sold it. Nor the budget clocked in at about $94 million, huge for 2002, and it paid off spectacularly with a worldwide gross of over $944 million in its original run, plus more from re-releases, crowning it the top-grossing film of 2002. Adjusted for inflation, and with recent theatrical revivals, that legacy keeps growing. The theatrical cut runs a tight 179 minutes, 3 hours that feel perfectly paced, never dragging. But then there's the extended edition, which pushes it to around 235 minutes. That's nearly 4 hours, including some disc change pauses on older releases, or about 3 hours 55 minutes in cleaner Blu-ray/4K versions. Those extra 40 to 50 minutes add richer character moments, deeper world building, more Rohan culture, expanded end sequences, and tiny tweaks to framing, dialogue, and pacing that make every scene feel even more lived in. Fans argue about theatrical versus extended. Some love the tighter rhythm of the cinema version for its intensity. Others swear the extended cut is the definitive one for completeness. Either way, both are masterpieces. Start with theatrical if you're new, then dive into extended for the full feast. The cast is a dream team that feels like they were born for these roles. Elijah Wood's Frodo carries quiet torment and growing resolve in every glance. Sean Astin's Sam is the emotional anchor, loyal, funny, heartbreakingly brave. He's the friend we all wish we had. Andy Serkis as Gollum is revolutionary. His motion capture performance, voice shifts between pitiful and menacing, facial expressions captured frame by frame, still one of the best CGI characters ever. Ian McKellen's Gandalf returns transformed, radiating power and warmth. Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn is stoic yet vulnerable, a king in hiding who earns every heroic moment. Orlando Bloom's Legolas glides through battles with impossible grace. John Rhys-Davies' Gimli brings gruff humor and heart, and doubles as Treebeard's rumbling voice. Christopher Lee's Saruman drips menace. Bernard Hill's Theoden transforms from broken to regal. Miranda Otto's Éowyn is fierce and layered. Carl Urban's Éomer intense. David Wenham's Faramir dignified. Liv Tyler's Arwen, Hugo Weaving's Elrond, Kate Blanchett's Galadriel, Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan's Merry and Pippin. Every return feels earned. Every new face fits perfectly. Behind the scenes, the dedication was unreal. Filmed entirely in New Zealand's jaw-dropping landscapes, plains, mountains, and forests that became Edoras on Mount Sunday, built over 6 months. Helms Deep at Dry Creek Quarry with a real, destructible set. Hundreds of horses were used carefully, no real harm, with digital stand-ins for dangerous bits. Viggo Mortensen bought his horse from the shoot because he bonded so deeply. The Battle of Helms Deep took 3.5 months to film, mostly at night in pouring artificial rain. 20 hours of footage edited down, with a rain machine drenching everyone constantly. Viggo even broke 2 toes kicking that orc helmet in rage. The take stayed because the pain looked real. Extras as orcs forging weapons were often Weta Workshop staff themselves. Forced perspective tricks made hobbits tiny next to humans. Actors positioned at different distances with scaled sets. Then injuries happened. Orlando Bloom cracked ribs falling off a horse. But the cast pushed through because they believed in the story. Weta Digital exploded in size for this one. Nearly 800 visual effects shots, 73 minutes of pure digital work. Gollum's creation was pioneering. Andy Serkis acted on set in a dot suit, scenes shot twice, with and without him. Then animated over his performance with 4-hour per-frame skin rendering. Treebeard combined a giant practical puppet with digital enhancements. Each frame took up to 48 hours. Miniatures like the massive Helms Deep model, 50 feet wide, were blown up for explosions, blended flawlessly with live action. Weapons, armor, costumes, thousands handmade, elves in autumn tones, Uruk-hai terrifying and functional. Howard Shore's score is legendary. London Philharmonic, London Voices, with soloists on Hardanger fiddle for Rohan's folk feel. New themes for hope, forests, darkness, Grammy-winning, still giving goosebumps. Andrew Lesnie's cinematography captures epic scale and intimate emotion. Sound won Oscars for editing. Makeup and prosthetics turned people into believable beings. Released December 18, 2002, US, it exploded. 95% on Rotten Tomatoes from hundreds of reviews, 87 on Metacritic, a cinema score. Nominated for 6 Oscars, won Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing. BAFTAs for Costume and Visual Effects, Grammys for Score, Hugo for Dramatic Presentation, MTV for Virtual Performance, Circus, Empire Best Picture. In recent years, 2025 New York Times readers ranked it 43rd Best 21st Century Film. A 2025 analysis of greatest movies ever placed it top 5 globally based on awards, box office, critic/audience scores. 2026 re-releases, 25th anniversary vibes, set pre-sale records, proving it endures. People still pack theaters for it. Why watch now? Because in a fast-scroll world, The Two Towers demands attention and rewards it. It's hope against despair, small folk doing big things, loyalty that moves mountains. The effects hold up, better than many new films, because they're grounded in practical work. Performances feel timeless. It inspires bravery, kindness, standing up. Rewatch and spot new details. Every prop tells a story. This film isn't just a middle chapter. It's the one that truly tests the characters, deepens the stakes, and delivers some of the most unforgettable sequences in movie history, all while keeping that perfect balance of heart, hope, and high-stakes adventure. If the first film introduced us to the wonder and danger of Middle-earth, The Two Towers shows us what it really means to fight for it when the odds feel impossible. And that's exactly why it still resonates so powerfully today. It's a story about endurance, about finding light in the shadows, about how even the smallest people can tip the scales of fate. Let's talk more about those extended edition gems, because if you're planning to dive in or revisit, knowing the differences can make the experience even richer. The theatrical version is masterful in its pacing, tight, intense, never letting the momentum drop. But the extended cut adds roughly 44 minutes of material that fleshes out the world and the people in it. You get extra moments with Merry and Pippin among the Ents, showing more of their growth and the ancient, slow-moving magic of Fangorn Forest. There's deeper insight into the Rohirrim culture, their customs, and the weight of leadership on Theoden's shoulders. Aragorn's heritage gets a bit more spotlight, reminding us why he's destined for greatness. And some of the quieter character beats, like Sam reflecting on Galadriel's gifts, or expanded glimpses into Faramir's inner conflict, add layers that make everyone feel more three-dimensional. These aren't just filler. They make the emotional payoffs hit harder, and the world feel even more alive. Many fans say the extended version feels closer to Tolkien's spirit, with more poetry and depth, while the theatrical keeps that cinematic urgency. Both are brilliant. Watch one, then the other, and see which version speaks to you more. The production trivia alone could fill hours, and it's all part of what makes this film feel so authentic. Viggo Mortensen lived the role so completely. He learned sword fighting, archery, and horsemanship to a professional level, and he kept most of his Aragorn gear after filming because the character became part of him. During one intense scene, he actually broke 2 toes kicking that iconic orc helmet in frustration. The pain was real, the take stayed, and it added raw authenticity. The cast spent months in New Zealand rain and mud. The Helms Deep battle was shot over 3.5 months, often at night in artificial downpours from massive rain machines that soaked everyone for realism. Horses were handled with incredible care, special trainers ensured no animal was ever in danger, and digital doubles filled in for risky shots. And Orlando Bloom's Legolas stunts included wire work and archery that required precision under pressure. He even cracked ribs falling off a horse, but powered through. The orcs and Uruk-hai were often played by the same crew from Weta Workshop, adding that insider love to the chaos. And the scale, think about it. Over 20,000 extras across the trilogy, but for the Two Towers, thousands were used in Helm's Deep alone. Many locals from New Zealand who got to be part of something historic. The sets were built to last. Adoris on Mount Sunday took 6 months to construct those golden halls with authentic thatch roofs that swayed in the wind. Weapons were real steel, armor handcrafted with historical inspiration from ancient cultures, making every swing and clash feel weighty. Odd's practical effects blended with digital in ways that still look stunning. No green screen overload here. The explosions, the crumbling walls, the charging armies all had real physicality. Howard Shore's music deserves its own spotlight again because it elevates everything. The Rohan theme on the Hardanger fiddle gives those sweeping plains a haunting, folkloric soul. The Ent motif is deep, rumbling, ancient, like the forest itself breathing. The score builds tension in the quiet moments and explodes in the battles, always serving the emotion first. It won a Grammy, and every listen feels like revisiting the journey. Awards-wise, The Two Towers earned its place among the greats. Nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, a huge deal for a fantasy film, it won Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing. At the BAFTAs, it took home Best Costume Design and Best Special Visual Effects. Andy Serkis won MTV's Best Virtual Performance for Gollum, a category created just for him. It swept Saturn Awards for Best Fantasy Film, Best Supporting Actor, Best Makeup, and more. Hugo Award for Dramatic Presentation, Empire Awards. The list goes on. Even now, in recent polls and rankings, it holds strong. In 2025 and 2026 fan-voted lists and critic retrospectives, it's often placed in the top tiers of 21st century films, with the Battle of Helm's Deep called one of cinema's greatest sequences ever. Rotten Tomatoes keeps it at 95%, IMDb at 8.8 from millions of votes, timeless acclaim, and the re-releases prove the love hasn't faded. In early 2026, for the 25th anniversary vibes of the trilogy's start, theaters packed out again. And The Two Towers alone pulled in millions in its recent run. Pre-sales smashed records, with hundreds of thousands of tickets sold fast, outpacing previous revivals. People still line up, still cheer at the big moments, still feel that rush. It's not nostalgia, it's genuine hunger for stories done with this level of passion and craft. So why keep coming back to The Two Towers in 2026? Because it reminds us that heroism isn't about being flawless, it's about showing up day after day, even when hope feels thin. It's about loyalty that doesn't waver, about finding beauty in a broken world, about ordinary hearts doing extraordinary things. In a time when so many films rush through spectacle, this one takes its time to let you feel the weight, the wonder, the warmth. The effects dazzle, the battles thrill, but it's the quiet moments, the friendships, the doubts, the small acts of kindness that stay with you long after the credits roll. Let's keep the momentum going because there's so much more to celebrate about The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers that makes it endlessly rewatchable and truly special. This is the film where the trilogy hits its stride in so many ways, balancing massive spectacle with intimate, character-driven moments that hit you right in the feels. It's the chapter that forces everyone to grow, to confront their fears, and to push forward even when the path looks bleakest. And honestly, that's part of its enduring power. It captures that universal feeling of being in the thick of a struggle where victory isn't guaranteed, yet you keep going because the people and creatures beside you make it worth it. Diving deeper into those extended editions, the extra footage truly enriches the experience without overwhelming the core flow. One standout is the expanded look at the Ents and Fangorn Forest. Merry and Pippin get more time to interact with Treebeard, showing the slow, deliberate nature of these ancient beings and how the hobbits slowly awaken their sense of urgency. You see more of the forest's destruction at Saruman's hands, which builds the stakes for the Ents' eventual march. There's also additional depth to the Rohirrim world, scenes that highlight their customs, their grief over fallen leaders like Theodred, and the cultural weight Theoden carries as he reclaims his throne. Aragorn's lineage gets subtle reinforcement, reminding us of his royal destiny without heavy-handed exposition. On the darker side, young Saruman's schemes feel more insidious with extra moments of him directing his forces and manipulating the land itself. Faramir's character gains nuance too. His internal conflict and family history add layers that make his choices more understandable and poignant. These aren't throwaway scenes, they make the world breathe more fully, turning Middle-earth from a backdrop into a living, breathing place full of history and consequence. The extended cut runs about 235 minutes total, adding roughly 44 minutes of pure value, perfect for those marathon viewings when you want every bit of lore. Production stories keep getting wilder the more you dig. The Helm's Deep sequence alone was a Herculean effort, filmed over 4 months, mostly at night, with constant artificial rain from huge machines that turned the set into a muddy, slippery battlefield. When 20 full hours of raw footage were boiled down to that intense, edge-of-your-seat climax. Safety was paramount. No real horses were ever put in harm's way during the charges. Instead, for dangerous bits, a rider in a motion capture suit, similar to Andy Serkis's setup, performed gallops and maneuvers on a controlled stage, then digitally composited in. Hundreds of horses, between 200 and 300 across the whole trilogy, were used carefully, with trainers ensuring every animal stayed safe and comfortable. The cast endured grueling conditions, constant wet and cold, heavy armor, long nights. Yet the energy on set was electric. Everyone knew they were part of something historic. Peter Jackson encouraged that family vibe. Many crew members' kids and relatives appeared as extras in crowd shots or battles, adding genuine warmth to the chaos. Now, the visual effects team at Weta pushed boundaries that still feel innovative. Beyond Gollum's pioneering performance capture, where Andy Serkis's every twitch and grimace was mapped to the digital model, the Ents combined massive practical puppets with digital extensions for fluid movement. Treebeard's face alone required intricate rigging so his expressions could convey centuries of wisdom and slow-building rage. Miniature sets for wide shots were enormous and detailed, then enhanced with practical explosions that matched the live-action pyrotechnics perfectly. The result? A seamless blend where you can't always tell what's real and what's crafted. Proof that grounded effects age beautifully. Home video's success tells its own story too. When the extended edition dropped on DVD in late 2003, it shattered records, selling over 3.5 million units in the first 5 days and generating massive rental revenue. By the next year, it was one of the top-selling home releases ever at the time. Fast forward to today, and those 4K Ultra HD releases from 2020 keep looking pristine, with remastered visuals and audio that make every landscape pop and every score swell feel cinematic even at home. The legacy keeps growing fresh. For the 25th anniversary of the Fellowship's release, the extended editions return to theaters in January 2026. Fellowship on the 16th, Two Towers on the 17th, Return of the King on the 18th, with additional dates later that month. Pre-sales alone hit around $5 million domestically early on, though with hundreds of thousands of tickets snapped up fast, outpacing previous revivals and proving the hunger for big-screen Middle-earth is stronger than ever. The Two Towers 2026 run pushed its North American total past $350 million after more than 2 decades, a testament to how audiences keep coming back. Theaters were packed again, cheers erupting at familiar moments, new fans discovering it on the big screen for the first time. It's not just nostalgia, it's recognition that this level of craftsmanship, practical sets, heartfelt performances, sweeping music, stands apart in an era of quick turnaround blockbusters. What keeps pulling people in year after year? It's the way the film honors Tolkien's themes without preaching. Friendship as the ultimate strength, the cost of war, the power of small acts in dark times, Sam's unwavering support, about Legolas and Gimli's growing bond, Aragorn's quiet leadership. These relationships feel earned because the actors lived them for so long. The battles thrill, but the quiet conversations linger. The score wraps it all in emotion that hits you viscerally. And visually, it still holds up. No dated CGI overload, just artistry that serves the story. We're not slowing down yet. There's still so much gold left in The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers that keeps fans coming back, from the tiniest production quirks to the massive cultural impact that echoes even now in 2026. This film sits right in that sweet spot where ambition meets heart, where every frame feels earned through sweat, creativity, and sheer willpower. It's the kind of movie that doesn't just entertain, it builds a community around it, one that still packs theaters decades later because the magic holds up. Let's zoom in on some of those extended edition highlights that really shine. Beyond the broader editions we touched on, specific new sequences add real emotional texture. Take the massacre at the Fords of Isen. Eomer and his riders discover the aftermath of battle, including Theodred's fallen body, which sets up the grief and urgency in Rohan so much more viscerally. Then there's the funeral of Theodred, where Éowyn sings a haunting lament in Rohirric over her cousin's body. It's a quiet, powerful moment of cultural mourning that grounds the kingdom's pain. The Song of the Entwives gives Treebeard a tender, melancholic ballad about lost love and forgotten forests, making the Ents feel even more ancient and sorrowful. Otter Pippin's Ent draft scene shows him drinking the Ents' nourishing drink and literally growing taller overnight, adding a bit of hobbit humor and wonder to their time in Fangorn. On the human side, the heir of Numenor has Gandalf quietly telling Aragorn that Sauron fears him as the rightful heir to the throne of men, planting seeds of destiny without over-explaining. And the elven rope bit expands Frodo and Sam's descent, showing their resourcefulness and the rope's almost magical properties. These moments, some short, some longer, don't pad the runtime. They deepen the lore, clarify motivations, and make the payoffs feel even more satisfying. The extended edition clocks in at around 223 to 235 minutes depending on the format, packing in roughly 44 minutes of fresh content that feels essential for diehards. And the onset dedication bordered on legendary, and the stories keep piling up. During the intense Rohan chase sequences, the physical toll was real. Orlando Bloom cracked ribs after being thrown from his horse, yet he kept going with that elven grace on screen. Brett Beatty, who doubled for Gimli in many action bits, ran through scenes with a dislocated knee. Viggo Mortensen's broken toes from that helmet kick weren't the only mishap. The whole Fellowship chase felt like a test of endurance. Sean Astin sliced his foot on broken glass in one river scene, needing stitches but pushing through. No major accidents halted production, but these little war wounds show how committed everyone was. The cast treated it like a real quest, bruises and all. Safety measures were meticulous, especially with the animals. Roughly 200 to 300 horses appeared across the trilogy, but for risky battle charges at Helm's Deep, they used clever stand-ins. A rider in a motion capture suit, like Andy Serkis's Gollum rig, performed gallops and maneuvers on a safe stage, then got digitally inserted so no live horse ever faced danger. The result? Epic cavalry without a single injury to the stars of the stables. Viggo loved his on-screen horse so much he bought it afterward and had it shipped back for pickup shots in 2002. The 2026 theatrical re-releases have been a phenomenon all their own, proving this story's pull is timeless. For the 25th anniversary of Fellowship's debut, Fathom Entertainment brought the extended editions back starting mid-January. Fellowship on the 16th, Two Towers on the 17th, Return of the King on the 18th, with extra dates rolling out. Pre-sales exploded to over $5 million domestically early on, with around 407,000 tickets sold fast, smashing the 2024 re-release numbers by 65% and setting franchise records for Fathom. When the weekends hit, the full trilogy pulled in about $9 million domestic plus offshore, with Two Towers contributing solidly in its slots. Theaters added more screens and showtimes to meet demand. Fans old and new filled seats, cheering the big moments like it was opening night all over again. Peter Jackson even recorded special fan intros for each film, adding that personal touch. It's the first major premium format return of the extended cuts, and it reminded everyone why these movies belong on the biggest screens possible. Trivia nuggets keep the rewatch fresh too. Alan Lee, the brilliant concept artist, pops up as a Rohan extra collecting weapons during Aragorn's Die as One of Them line at Helm's Deep. The theatrical had about 800 visual effects shots. The extended bumps it to nearly 960 with added polish. Howard Shore's score layers keep revealing themselves, the subtle Ent themes rumbling under forest scenes, the Rohan fiddle evoking windswept plains. Every listen uncovers new emotional threads. This film endures because it dares to be patient in its heroism. It lets friendships simmer, lets despair build before hope breaks through, lets landscapes tell stories without words. In 2026, with new Tolkien projects on the horizon like The Hunt for Gollum, revisiting The Two Towers feels like reconnecting with the roots of it all. The craftsmanship, the passion, the belief that epic tales can still move us deeply. Whether it's the thoughtful expansions in the extended cut, the raw dedication behind the camera, or the way the film continues to draw crowds in fresh ways, every layer reveals why this movie remains a benchmark for fantasy storytelling. Focusing on some standout extended edition sequences that truly elevate the experience, one powerful addition is the funeral of Theodred. Here, Theoden leads a solemn mourning ritual for his fallen son, with Éowyn delivering a poignant lament in the ancient tongue of Rohan. It's a moving glimpse into the kingdom's traditions and the personal toll of war that makes Theoden's later resolve feel even more earned. Another gem is the Ent Draft, where Pippin drinks the nourishing Ent drink and wakes up noticeably taller the next morning, are injecting a touch of whimsical hobbit charm and wonder into their time with the tree herders. The Song of the Entwives lets Treebeard share a melancholic ballad about lost companionship and vanished forests, underscoring the Ents' deep sorrow and the urgency of their awakening. Then there's the massacre at the Fords of Isen, showing Éomer's riders discovering the grim aftermath of battle and Theodred's body, heightening the sense of loss and chaos in Rohan right from the start. On the Hobbit front, the Elven Rope descent gets more detail, highlighting Frodo and Sam's ingenuity as they navigate treacherous cliffs. These additions, carefully woven in, bring richer cultural texture, emotional depth, and a closer alignment with Tolkien's world without disrupting the narrative drive. The commitment from the team extended far beyond the usual call of duty. In one chaotic battle setup, a practical rig, a fur-covered mount rocked vigorously by crew members, gave the actors genuine physical motion, weight, and fear that no pure CGI could replicate convincingly. This hands-on approach grounded even the most fantastical moments in real sensation, making the peril feel visceral. Meanwhile, the sheer number of horses involved, around 200 to 300 across the trilogy, required innovative solutions for safety during intense charges. Rather than risking live animals in the fray, a rider in a specialized motion capture suit performed gallops, rearing, and maneuvers on a controlled stage, allowing seamless digital integration later. It ensured epic cavalry sequences without compromising animal welfare. Onto detail that speaks volumes about the production's care and ingenuity. Recent events have only amplified the film's staying power. The 25th anniversary theatrical re-release of the extended editions through Fathom Entertainment kicked off in mid-January 2026, with The Two Towers screening prominently on January 17th and additional dates added due to overwhelming demand. Pre-sales alone hit around $5 million domestically early on, with roughly 407,000 tickets sold quickly, outpacing the previous 2024 revival by a solid 65%. When the full weekend rolled in, the entire Trilogy event pulled in about $9 million domestic plus $1.5 million offshore for a global haul of $10.5 million to $11 million. The Two Towers contributed strongly, with its North American re-release total climbing past $4 million in that run alone, and the worldwide figure reaching over $5 million for the 2026 cycle. Theaters expanded showtimes and locations to accommodate the surge, and Peter Jackson's recorded fan introductions added a heartfelt welcome. It's clear this isn't fading nostalgia. New generations are discovering it on the big screen, and longtime fans are reliving it with the same awe. Some lesser-known trivia keeps every viewing surprising too. Alan Lee, one of the trilogy's legendary concept artists, appears briefly as a Rohan extra gathering weapons during Aragorn's stirring "Die as one of them" speech at Helm's Deep. The battle footage itself was massive, edited from 20 full hours shot over 4 months under relentless rain. And while many Uruk-hai needed to tower menacingly, the production couldn't find enough tall actors, so shorter performers filled ranks, with clever camera work and armor design maintaining the intimidating scale. What makes The Two Towers so rewatchable is how it layers quiet humanity amid the grandeur. It gives space for doubt, growth, and connection. those bonds forged in hardship that carry the weight of the world. The practical artistry, the emotional authenticity, the cultural respect, all of it combines into something that feels bigger than a movie. In an age of endless content, this one still stands out for taking its time to build something lasting. We're still rolling strong because The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers has layers upon layers that keep revealing themselves, no matter how many times you've seen it. This is the film that really tests the bonds of friendship under pressure, shows the slow awakening of ancient forces, and delivers that massive turning point battle that feels like the fate of everything hangs in the balance. It's where the trilogy shifts from setup to full-on conflict, and every rewatch uncovers new appreciation for how Peter Jackson wove hope, tension, and humanity into every corner. Diving into even more of those extended edition treasures that make the longer cut so rewarding, consider Brego, a heartfelt scene where Aragorn encounters the horse that once belonged to Theodred. The animal, scarred and wild from battle, finds trust in Aragorn, who speaks gently to calm him. It's a quiet moment of compassion that echoes the theme of healing broken things and ties into Aragorn's later ride to Helm's Deep. And then there's the Ring of Barahir, expanding on Aragorn's heritage with a close look at the ancient heirloom he wears, a subtle reminder of his royal bloodline and the legacy he's reluctant to claim. On the darker end, Sons of the Steward adds depth to Faramir through flashbacks showing his complicated relationship with his father Denethor and brother Boromir, making his decisions later feel more nuanced and tragic. One of the Dunedain gives Gandalf a chance to quietly affirm Aragorn's destiny, while Fangorn comes to Helm's Deep hints at the forest's role in the aftermath with those mysterious horns. These aren't just extras. They enrich motivations, add cultural flavor to Rohan and Gondor, and make the emotional arcs feel fuller and more book-faithful. The behind-the-scenes grit keeps amazing me, too. For the intense night camp scenes in Fangorn, the crew built massive practical sets with real trees and undergrowth to capture that eerie, living forest atmosphere. No shortcuts with green screens for those close-ups. During the Uruk-hai march sequences, the actors playing the orcs wore heavy prosthetics and armor for hours in New Zealand's variable weather, often running long distances to sell the relentless pursuit. One clever trick for scale: when hobbits interacted with larger characters, they used forced perspective ramps and precise blocking so everything lined up perfectly without digital resizing in post. The production even had a dedicated horse whisperer team to handle the animal's comfort. Viggo's bond with his mount was so real that the horse responded to his voice cues naturally on camera. The 2026 re-release numbers keep climbing in the records books as well. From Box Office Mojo's worldwide tallies, The Two Towers' 2026 theatrical run has now crossed $5.2 million globally in its anniversary screenings, with domestic figures around $4 million and international adding over $1 million. That puts it solidly in the year's re-release charts, outpacing many newer titles in limited runs. The event's success led Fathom to extend showtimes into late January and February at select venues, with fans reporting packed houses and standing ovations during key sequences. Peter Jackson's personal video intros, filmed just for this revival, added that extra layer of connection, thanking audiences for keeping the story alive after all these years. Little production quirks add so much charm on repeat views. The title card in the extended cut appears over a sweeping hill panorama instead of the theatrical's quicker fade-in, giving a more epic sense of scale right away. Some dialogue takes were swapped for alternate lines that feel slightly warmer or more intense, like in Faramir's capture scene where the delivery shifts to show more internal conflict. And the sound design tweaks in extended moments, like deeper forest ambiances or subtle ent rumbles, make the audio experience richer on good headphones or surround systems. This movie's strength lies in how it earns every big moment through build-up. It doesn't rush the friendships or the despair. It lets them simmer, so when hope flickers back, it hits hard. The blend of practical craftsmanship, actor commitment, and respectful adaptation creates something that feels eternal. In 2026, Kriyo's new Middle-earth stories brew, returning to The Two Towers reminds us why the foundation was built so strong. It's about people and hobbits rising together against impossible darkness. Let's highlight a few more standout extended edition moments that add such meaningful texture. In Brego, Aragorn finds the war-scarred horse once ridden by Theodred. The gentle way he calms the frightened animal shows Aragorn's innate kindness and connection to the land, foreshadowing his path as a healer king. The Ring of Barahir gives a closer look at the ancient heirloom Aragorn carries, a quiet symbol of his noble lineage that weighs on him throughout. Sons of the Steward brings in poignant flashbacks to Faramir's memories of Boromir and their father Denethor, and revealing the family dynamics and pressures that shape Faramir's choices. It's heartbreaking and adds real complexity to his arc. One of the Dunedain has Gandalf quietly affirming Aragorn's true identity as heir to the throne of men, planting seeds of destiny amid the uncertainty. And Fangorn comes to Helm's Deep, offers a subtle tease of the Horn's mysterious involvement in the battle's aftermath, tying the natural world back into the conflict in a poetic way. These scenes weave in more lore, emotion, and character insight, making the extended version feel like the fuller, more complete telling many fans prefer. Production anecdotes keep highlighting the human effort behind the spectacle. For the eerie Fangorn forest sequences, the team constructed massive practical sets with real foliage and towering tree elements to capture that living, breathing, ancient vibe up close. Those intimate shots feel tangible because so much was built physically. The Uruk-hai actors endured long hours in heavy makeup and armor, often marching or running extended distances to convey their relentless drive. The physicality sold the menace perfectly. Forced perspective was used masterfully for Hobbit-scale interactions. Precise positioning on ramps and careful blocking ensured seamless size differences without relying solely on digital fixes. The horse handlers went above and beyond. Every animal was treated with top priority, and the crew's expertise meant no compromises on safety or realism during those sweeping Rohan rides. The 2026 anniversary re-releases have solidified the film's place as an enduring event. According to Box Office Mojo's worldwide tallies, The Two Towers' 2026 re-release has now reached $5.278 million globally, with domestic earnings around $4.09 million and international adding about $1.185 million. That performance ranks it solidly among the year's limited re-releases, especially impressive, given the packed weekend figures. Fathom's January event saw the full trilogy pull in roughly $9 million domestic plus $1.5 million offshore for a $10.5 million global haul across the three films. The Two Towers held its own with strong showings starting Saturday screenings, and extra dates were added in response to demand. Fans packed venues, with reports of cheers and emotional reactions echoing through theaters. It's proof that this story still draws people in fresh ways, bridging generations. Fun production nuggets keep every viewing lively. The title sequence in the extended edition opens over a sweeping panoramic hill shot instead of the theatrical's quicker entry, setting a grander tone immediately. Some alternate takes were swapped in for warmer or more intense deliveries, like slight variations in Faramir's confrontation lines that heighten his inner struggle. The sound team layered in richer ambient details for extended forest and battle moments, deeper wind howls, subtle ent groans that pop on high-quality audio setups and make immersion complete. At its core, The Two Towers thrives because it respects the slow burn of heroism. It builds tension through doubt and small victories, lets relationships evolve naturally, and shows that true strength often comes from quiet persistence rather than flashy power. The practical sets, committed performances, and deep respect for the source material create a world that feels authentic and lived in. As new chapters in Middle-earth loom on the horizon, this film remains the emotional heartbeat that everything else builds upon. We're keeping the energy high because The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers has so much more depth to unpack. Those subtle enhancements in the extended cut, the clever filmmaking tricks, and the ongoing wave of appreciation that makes it feel as vital today as it did back in 2002. Spotlighting a handful more of the extended edition's standout additions that bring extra richness. The Taming of Sméagol expands the opening with Frodo and Sam's initial struggles against Gollum, showing more of the creature's cunning and the Hobbit's determination in a tense, character-building sequence. The Uruk-hai gives a glimpse into the orcs' brutal camp life, including their rough camaraderie and the harsh conditions they endure under Saruman's orders. The Burning of the Westfold depicts Saruman's forces devastating Rohan's farmlands in vivid detail, ramping up the threat to the kingdom and showing the human cost of his aggression. The Banishment of Eomer reveals the full drama of Wormtongue's influence, with Theoden exiling his nephew under manipulation. It's a pivotal political moment that heightens the stakes for Rohan's leadership. Night camp at Fangorn adds atmosphere to Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli's pursuit, with quiet reflections around the fire that deepen their unlikely alliance. These inclusions flesh out the world's conflicts, cultures, and tensions in ways that make the journey feel more layered and immersive. The ingenuity behind the camera never ceases to impress. For the massive Helms Deep rain-soaked battle, the crew engineered a custom rain system that poured constantly for realism, but it also created slippery mud that challenged the actors. Yet that very discomfort fed into the raw, exhausted performances you see on screen. In scenes where characters needed to appear larger or smaller, the team used meticulously scaled miniatures, combined with live actors at varying distances from the camera, achieving seamless illusions without heavy post-production tweaks. The orc makeup process was grueling. Prosthetics applied daily for hours, with some performers staying in character between takes to maintain the menacing energy. The 2026 re-release continues to make headlines with its strong performance. Box Office Mojo reports that The Two Towers' 2026 theatrical revival has grossed $5,278,715 worldwide so far, including $4,093,642 domestic and $185,073 from international markets. That places it firmly in the year's re-release rankings, especially impressive for a limited run celebrating the trilogy's legacy. The January event through Fathom Entertainment saw the full Trilogy event generate around $10.5 million globally over the key weekend, with Two Towers holding strong in its Saturday start slots and helping drive extended showtimes at many theaters. The demand has been remarkable. Pre-sales hit $5 million early with over 400,000 tickets sold, surpassing previous revivals and drawing both longtime fans and newcomers to experience it on the big screen once more. Quirky details keep popping up that reward close attention. The boy soprano Ben Del Maestro's ethereal voice features in key score moments, adding that haunting, angelic quality during intense sequences like the approach to Osgiliath. Some alternate line deliveries in the extended cut bring slight shifts in tone, warmer exchanges, or sharper edges that subtly alter the emotional flavor of conversations. The appendices on home releases dive into how the sound team layered natural New Zealand ambiences, wind through grass, distant bird calls, into quieter scenes to make the landscapes feel authentically alive. What truly elevates The Two Towers is its commitment to showing heroism in its many forms. The steadfast loyalty of friends, the reluctant rise of leaders, the awakening of ancient guardians. It balances thunderous action with reflective pauses, letting the weight of choices linger so the triumphs resonate deeper. The practical dedication, thoughtful expansions, and respectful storytelling make it a film that grows with every viewing. The magic of The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers keeps unfolding in ways that make it impossible to put down, whether through the carefully crafted additions that deepen the lore, the innovative solutions on set, or the fresh enthusiasm it still generates from audiences worldwide, exploring yet more of the extended edition's enriching sequences that truly stand out. But the passage of the marshes extends Frodo, Sam, and Gollum's treacherous journey through the dead marshes, showing more of the ghostly faces in the water and the eerie, haunting atmosphere that heightens Gollum's torment and the hobbit's growing unease. The White Rider adds extra weight to Gandalf's return, with more dialogue revealing his transformation and the power he now wields as the White. The King of the Golden Hall expands the cleansing of Theoden, including additional moments of the king's recovery and the removal of Wormtongue's influence that make the shift from despair to hope feel even more profound. A Daughter of Kings gives Éowyn a touching scene reflecting on her heritage and role in Rohan, underscoring her strength and the burdens she carries as a shield maiden. These bits bring more nuance to the characters' inner worlds, amplify the sense of ancient magic awakening, and tie threads together with greater emotional resonance. The creativity in solving production challenges was endless. To capture the scale of vast armies without endless extras, the team built massive digital crowds using AI-assisted crowd simulation for the first time on this level, blending real performers with procedurally generated soldiers that reacted dynamically to the environment. For the dramatic falls and leaps in battle, stunt performers used harnesses and trampolines combined with wirework, then layered in digital enhancements for impossible heights and impacts that looked seamless. The costume department handmade over 2,000 unique pieces for Rohan alone, by drawing from historical Viking and Anglo-Saxon influences to give every warrior a distinct yet cohesive look that felt lived in and authentic. The 2026 re-release keeps proving its box office strength, too. Per Box Office Mojo's latest worldwide figures, The Two Towers 2026 revival stands at $5,278,715 globally, with $4,093,642 coming from domestic markets and $1,185,073 from international territories. That's a solid spot in the year's re-release rankings, especially for a 25th anniversary event that saw the full trilogy pull in around $11 million worldwide during its peak weekend through Fathom Entertainment. The pre-sales surged, hitting $5 million early with over 407,000 tickets sold, led to added screenings and locations, turning theaters into communal celebrations once again. And intriguing production tidbits continue to surface on every revisit. The young singer Ben Del Maestro lent his pure boy-soprano voice to ethereal choir moments in the score, creating those spine-tingling highs during tense approaches and quiet reflections. Some sound effects drew from real New Zealand wildlife. Distant bird calls and wind through valleys mixed subtly into ambient tracks for added immersion. In one clever edit, the theatrical's abrupt cuts were softened in extended versions with transitional beats that let scenes breathe more naturally. The film's lasting draw comes from how it portrays resilience, not through invincible heroes, but through flawed individuals clinging to hope, loyalty, and each other. It gives room for grief to linger, for alliances to form slowly, and for small kindnesses to spark massive change. And the blend of groundbreaking tech, heartfelt acting, and faithful spirit ensures it never feels dated. We're still deep in the heart of why The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers remains one of the most captivating, emotionally resonant, and technically astonishing films ever made. And there's plenty more to celebrate as we keep peeling back these layers without circling back to anything we've already covered. This is the movie that truly transforms the trilogy from a grand adventure into something profoundly human, where every character is forced to confront their limits, where alliances are forged in the crucible of shared peril, where the natural world itself begins to stir and respond to the growing darkness, and where hope isn't handed out easily but has to be fought for inch by agonizing inch. It's the chapter that dares to linger in uncertainty, letting doubt and exhaustion settle over the characters like a heavy fog before any light breaks through. And that patience is exactly what makes the eventual surges of courage and unity feel so earned and so powerful. You can feel the weight of every mile traveled, every whispered plan, every fleeting glance of encouragement between friends who know the odds are stacked impossibly high. And that's the kind of storytelling that sticks with you long after the screen fades to black. Among the extended edition's most rewarding expansions are sequences that slow the pace just enough to let important emotional undercurrents rise to the surface in ways the theatrical cut, by necessity, had to trim for momentum. For instance, the added material around the Dead Marsh's journey stretches the sense of creeping dread and supernatural melancholy, with longer shots of the candle-like corpse lights flickering under the stagnant water, and more time spent on Gollum's fractured muttering as he wrestles with his dual impulses. It's unsettling and tragic in equal measure, pulling you deeper into the psychological toll the ring exacts even on someone already broken by it. Then there's the fuller treatment of Gandalf's reappearance as the White, where the conversation with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli lingers on his explanation of his resurrection and renewed purpose. The quiet awe in the group's reactions, the way the light catches Gandalf's white robes against the dim forest. All of it reinforces that this is no ordinary return, but a divine intervention that shifts the entire balance of power without ever feeling forced or convenient. Eowyn's expanded reflections in the Golden Hall give her a moment to voice her frustration at being confined to traditional roles while warriors ride to battle, revealing the fire beneath her composed exterior and making her later acts of defiance feel like the natural culmination of years of suppressed longing for purpose. These aren't flashy additions. They're deliberate breaths that allow grief, wonder, identity, and resolve to unfold at a human scale amid the epic sweep, turning what could have been mere plot progression into something achingly personal and universally relatable. On the filmmaking side, With the ingenuity required to bring such a colossal vision to life without modern shortcuts is staggering when you consider how much was achieved through sheer determination and practical problem-solving. The massive digital army simulations for Helm's Deep weren't just background filler. They were programmed with individual behavioral logic so that orcs and uruks reacted differently to explosions, arrows, and collapsing structures. Some cowered, some charged blindly, some tried to climb over their fallen comrades, creating a chaotic, believable swarm that feels alive rather than mechanical. Stunt coordinators choreographed falls from great heights, using a combination of crash pads hidden under soft earth, tensioned wires for controlled descents, and high-speed cameras to capture the raw physics of bodies tumbling through rain and mud. And then blended those real impacts with subtle digital extensions so no performer was ever truly in mortal danger, yet the violence retained its brutal authenticity. Costumers didn't stop at fitting armor. They deliberately weathered and distressed every piece, rubbing salt into leather, scorching edges with torches, layering mud and fake blood repeatedly, so that even in wide shots, you could sense these soldiers had been living rough for weeks or months. The attention to tactile reality extended to props too. Swords were balanced for actual combat weight, shields were made from layered wood and metal so they rang convincingly when struck, and even the smallest details like the frayed edges on hobbit cloaks or the tarnished silver on elven brooches told silent stories of travel and hardship. And the cultural ripple effect keeps proving itself in real time. The 2026 anniversary screenings didn't just bring nostalgic fans back to theaters, they sparked a new wave of first-time viewers, especially younger audiences discovering the trilogy on the big screen for the first time in premium formats with remastered sound and picture that make every thunderclap, every swelling string section, every distant horn call hit with fresh intensity. Box office trackers show The Two Towers continuing to add to its revival totals in scattered encore runs through February, with isolated midnight screenings and special fan events still drawing healthy crowds even weeks after the main event, a testament to word-of-mouth momentum that no marketing campaign could manufacture. Online communities are still buzzing with reaction videos, like side-by-side comparisons of theatrical versus extended moments, and deep-dive threads analyzing how Howard Shore's leitmotifs evolve across just this one film, how the Rohan theme starts fragile and folk-like before hardening into something martial and defiant, or how Gollum's twisted vocal lines weave in and out of the underscore like a musical representation of his fractured mind. It's the kind of ongoing conversation that only happens around works that genuinely reward scrutiny and affection over decades. Ultimately, The Two Towers endures because it refuses to treat its audience like passive spectators. It invites you to feel the cold rain, the ache of tired muscles, the fragile warmth of camaraderie in the dark, the slow-building fury of an ancient forest roused to anger. And it shows that true heroism often looks like stubborn refusal to give up rather than effortless triumph. That loyalty can be as quiet as carrying your friend when he can no longer walk. That even the mightiest fortresses can fall unless ordinary people choose to stand together. In a world that sometimes feels overwhelming, this film offers not cheap escapism, but a reminder that endurance, compassion, and shared purpose can still turn the tide. And that message lands harder with every passing year. Let's keep pressing forward because The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers is one of those rare films that rewards endless exploration. The more you return to it, the more you notice how masterfully every element interlocks to create an experience that feels both intimate and monumental. How the story never rushes past the human, or hobbit, or elven, or dwarven cost of the conflict. How it allows silence and stillness to speak as loudly as the clash of steel or the roar of charging armies. This is the installment where the weight of separation becomes almost palpable. Friends torn apart by circumstance yet bound by unbreakable loyalty, where the smallest gestures, a shared look across a battlefield, a hand steadying another on a rain-slicked wall, a whispered promise in the dead of night, carry the same narrative force as the grandest set pieces. Peter Jackson and his team understood that epic scale only lands when it's anchored in the personal, so they let moments of vulnerability breathe. The quiet despair that flickers across Theoden's face as he reclaims his mind. The way Legolas and Gimli's banter slowly evolves from wary rivalry into genuine respect forged through shared peril. The heartbreaking tenderness with which Sam continues to carry not just Frodo's burden, but the hope that Frodo himself is starting to lose. These aren't side notes. They're the emotional spine that makes the spectacle matter, that turns what could have been mere visual fireworks into something that stirs the soul and lingers in the memory long after the credits have rolled. The extended edition continues to offer some of its richest gifts in these quieter, more introspective corners that the theatrical version understandably streamlined for theatrical pacing. Yet here they unfold with deliberate grace and give the film an even greater sense of lived-in depth. Take the expanded sequence in the Golden Hall after Gandalf's arrival. The ritual of cleansing Theoden is drawn out just a little longer, allowing us to witness the king's gradual return to himself. The trembling hands, the clouded eyes slowly clearing, the first uncertain steps toward the light streaming through the high windows. And in those extra beats we feel the profound relief of a people who have been living under a shadow for too long, making Theoden's subsequent rallying cry resonate with hard-won authenticity rather than sudden heroism. Or consider the additional dialogue woven into The Hobbit's time with the Ents, where Treebeard speaks more fully of the slow grief that has settled over his kind, the centuries of watching forests shrink and entwives vanish without trace. His rumbling voice carries centuries of sorrow. Yet there's a spark of rekindled purpose when Merry and Pippin challenge him to act, turning what might have been abstract lore into a living, aching history that mirrors the larger struggle against industrial destruction. These moments don't accelerate the plot, they deepen it, letting us inhabit the world more fully, feel the slow turning of great wheels that have been motionless for ages, and understand that victory, if it comes, will be paid for not just in blood, but in the slow reclamation of hope by beings who had almost forgotten how to feel it. From a technical standpoint, the sheer ambition of what the crew accomplished without today's ubiquitous digital shortcuts still astonishes. The Helm's Deep set wasn't merely a backdrop, but a functioning, multi-level fortress with real stone walls that could be safely toppled in sections for explosive shots, real wooden gates that splintered under battering rams, real iron grates that rang when struck, all constructed at a scale that forced the actors to move through the space as if it were genuinely their last stand. Lighting was another triumph. Massive practical floods and arc lights created the relentless, silvery downpour that drenched everyone for hours on end. But it also sculpted faces with harsh shadows and glistening highlights that made exhaustion look heroic rather than merely wet. The sound department layered in an almost tactile quality to the battle. The low, bone-rattling thud of orc drums carried on the wind from miles away, the metallic whine of arrows slicing through rain, the wet crunch of bodies hitting stone, the distant screams that echoed off the cliffs, all mixed so precisely that you feel the chaos pressing in from every direction. Even the color grading was meticulous. The desaturated, cold palette of Rohan's plains and the storm-lashed fortress contrasts sharply with the warmer, golden memory of earlier elven realms, visually reinforcing the sense that the world is darkening yet pockets of light persist through sheer human and non-human will. And in 2026, the film's hold on audiences shows no sign of loosening. The recent theatrical revival didn't just replay old glories. It reignited conversations across platforms, with younger viewers posting clips of the Ents March or Sam's speech about stories, marveling at how contemporary the themes feel. Resistance to ecological devastation, the corrosive power of division sown by manipulation, another quiet strength found in refusing to abandon someone when everything urges you to save yourself. The screenings became communal events again, people clapping when the dawn breaks over Helm's Deep, wiping tears during the quiet moments of farewell, sharing knowing glances when familiar lines land just right. It's evidence that great storytelling doesn't age. It matures, revealing new facets as the world changes around it, reminding us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving forward anyway. That friendship can be the most powerful force in any universe, and that sometimes the greatest battles are won not by destroying evil outright, but by preserving the things worth saving until the light returns. We're still immersed in the boundless wonder of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, a film that somehow manages to feel both timeless and urgently alive every single time you return to it, as though the very air of Middle-earth carries a quiet insistence that you pay attention, not just to the sweeping vistas or the thunder of battle, but to the small, trembling human truths hidden inside every frame. This is the story where isolation becomes a palpable force. The Fellowship is shattered, paths diverge into darkness and uncertainty, yet the invisible threads of loyalty refuse to snap completely. Sam's steady presence beside Frodo becomes almost a physical shield against despair. Legolas and Gimli discover that differences in stature and lifespan matter far less than the willingness to stand back to back against overwhelming odds. And even the ancient Ents, who have spent ages in deliberate stillness, are stirred to movement not by grand speeches but by the persistent, almost childlike insistence of two small hobbits who refuse to accept that some things are simply too late to save. Jackson's direction gives these relationships room to breathe and evolve at their own unhurried pace. He lets silences stretch, lets glances linger, lets the camera rest on faces long enough for us to register the flicker of fear, the spark of resolve, the sudden softening of suspicion into trust, so that when the great crescendo arrives, it doesn't feel manufactured. It feels inevitable, earned through every quiet conversation, every shared burden, every moment when someone chose to keep going, even though giving up would have been easier and perhaps wiser. One of the extended edition's greatest strengths lies in how it trusts the audience with that slowness, not granting extra time to sequences that deepen the emotional architecture without ever diluting the momentum. The additional material during the approach to Helm's Deep, for example, allows Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli to share a longer fireside exchange under the stars. Aragorn speaking softly of his years wandering as Strider, Legolas describing the immortal melancholy of watching mortal friends age and fade, Gimli gruffly admitting that dwarves too feel the ache of long partings. And in those unguarded words we glimpse the centuries of history each carries, making their present alliance feel like the rare convergence of three vastly different lifespans, choosing the same fragile moment to matter. Similarly, the extended glimpse into Wormtongue's manipulations within Edoras stretches the sense of creeping corruption. We see more of the poisoned counsel he whispers, the way Theoden's hall has grown dim and airless under his influence, the subtle physical decline of the king himself before Gandalf's arrival, so that when the wizard finally casts the spell of clarity, the release is almost physical, a rush of clean air into a room that had been slowly suffocating. These expansions aren't decorative, they're architectural, building the foundation so that every later triumph, whether a king reclaiming his voice, a friendship solidifying in the face of death, or an entire people choosing to defend what remains, lands with greater force and greater truth. Nigh the craftsmanship that supports all of this emotional weight is equally staggering in its refusal to take shortcuts. The production team didn't merely simulate rain for Helm's Deep. They engineered a system capable of dumping thousands of gallons per minute so consistently that the ground turned into a thick, sucking mire within minutes, forcing actors and stunt performers to move through genuine resistance that translated directly into the exhausted, desperate body language you see on screen. No amount of acting could replicate the way cold water seeps into armor, how wet leather stiffens, how visibility drops to mere feet in the deluge. And that same commitment extended to the miniature work. The vast wide shots of marching Uruk-hai or the distant approach of reinforcements were achieved with meticulously detailed scale models, some over 40 feet across, lit and photographed under controlled conditions, then painstakingly composited so that the transition from miniature to live action feels imperceptible, preserving a unified sense of scale and atmosphere that purely digital armies often struggle to match. Even the score's placement was handled with surgical precision. Howard Shore composed transitional cues that bridge scenes without jarring cuts, letting one motif bleed quietly into another so that the emotional current never breaks. Whether it's the fragile flute line of the Hobbit's theme giving way to the resolute brass of Rohan, or the dissonant, crawling strings that underscore Gollum's internal war slowly merging with the deeper, more ominous pulses of the ring itself. And perhaps most remarkably, the film continues to find new generations in 2026 who encounter it not as a relic of early 2000s fantasy cinema, but as a living, breathing counterpoint to the fast-scroll, bite-sized storytelling that dominates so much of today's media. Younger viewers, some watching for the first time in theaters during the recent anniversary run, have been posting raw, unfiltered reactions online. Astonishment at how long the camera is willing to stay with a single character's face during a moment of doubt, gratitude for the absence of constant quips or self-aware irony, genuine tears at Sam's refusal to leave Frodo even when the quest seems hopeless. These responses aren't nostalgia, but they're recognition that a story told with patience, conviction, and reverence for its source material can still pierce through cynicism and distraction. The Two Towers doesn't lecture about courage or friendship or stewardship of the earth. It shows them in action, in the mud, in the rain, in the dark, in the small hours when no one is watching, and that demonstration carries a persuasive power no sermon ever could. The spell that The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers casts never truly lifts because it is built on such a profound understanding of how stories can mirror the quiet, stubborn rhythms of real endurance. How the longest nights are survived not through bursts of superhuman strength, but through the accumulation of countless small refusals to surrender. But how a single shared meal by a dying fire or a hand reaching out in the dark can become the fulcrum on which entire destinies turn. How the film refuses to romanticize suffering yet never lets it have the final word. Jackson and his collaborators treat every character as though their inner life is as vast and worthy of exploration as the landscapes they traverse. We sense the centuries of accumulated loss behind Treebeard's slow, deliberate anger, the way it isn't rage for its own sake, but a long, suppressed mourning for a world that once sang with green life and now stands silent. We feel the particular loneliness of Éowyn, not as generic female frustration, but as the specific ache of someone born into a lineage of shield-bearers, yet barred from the shield wall by custom and grief. Her quiet fury at being left behind to tend the helpless while the men ride to what might be their last fight. We watch Aragorn carry the double burden of a crown he does not yet want, and a people who do not yet know they need him, his every step away from the throne feeling like both self-preservation and betrayal until the moment arrives when running further would mean abandoning everything he has come to love. These are not archetypes. They are people or beings caught in history's grinding machinery, and the film grants them the dignity of doubt, hesitation, second thoughts, and gradual, hard-won clarity, making their eventual choices feel like miracles rather than plot necessities. The extended cut's most precious contributions often lie in these spaces of hesitation and gradual awakening, and where the story pauses long enough for us to register the cost of every decision before it is made. One such gift is the fuller unfolding of the debate among the Rohirrim elders in the Golden Hall before the muster is called. More voices raised in fear, in memory of past defeats, in pragmatic arguments for flight rather than futile stand. And in the midst of that honest discord, Theoden listens, weighs, then chooses the harder path anyway, not out of blind heroism, but because he has looked despair in the face and decided it will not dictate his people's ending. Another lies in the added texture given to the Entmoot itself. Treebeard and the others circle one another in that ancient, unhurried deliberation, their deep voices overlapping in slow, unrumbling disagreement about whether the world of men is still worth saving, or whether they should simply let time and Saruman's axis finish what entropy has already begun. The sequence stretches the sense of how alien and almost geological their sense of time is, making Merry and Pippin's desperate pleading feel like the frantic chirping of sparrows trying to rouse mountains. Yet it is precisely that mismatch of tempo that finally cracks the Ent's long inertia and sets the forest marching. These longer beats do not delay the action. They make it inevitable. They show us the invisible labor of changing minds that have not changed in ages, reminding us that revolutions, whether of armies or of ancient trees, often begin with someone too stubborn or too hopeful to accept that the story is already over. Technically, the film's refusal to rely on illusion over substance continues to set it apart even now. The massive siege towers that rolled toward Helm's Deep were not digital phantoms, but towering practical constructs of timber and rope, built to actual weight and scale, so that when they burned, the flames were real. The smoke was thick and choking. The heat was felt by everyone on set. Actors and stunt performers had to navigate genuine danger zones where embers rained down and collapsing wood sent sparks flying, lending their movements an authenticity that no motion capture stage can fully replicate. The lighting team used enormous banks of practical lamps mounted on cranes to create the cold, metallic sheen of moonlight on wet armor and the warm, guttering orange of torches in the caves below. When crafting a visual language that tells us exactly where safety ends and peril begins without a single line of exposition. Even the editing rhythm was tuned like an instrument. Longer takes during the moments of waiting, before the first ladder hits the wall, before the battering ram reaches the gate. Build unbearable tension, then release it in rapid, breathless cuts once the violence erupts, so the audience feels the same shift from dread anticipation to chaotic survival that the characters do. It is filmmaking that respects the body's response to threat. The held breath, the quickened pulse, the instinctive flinch. And in the present moment of 2026, as screens everywhere favor brevity and distraction, At the Two Towers stands almost defiantly against that tide. Its 3-hour runtime, or nearly 4 in the extended cut, feels not like an imposition but like a gift, a deliberate invitation to sit still and feel something fully instead of skimming across surfaces. New viewers encountering it now often speak of the shock of its patience, how it dares to let a conversation stretch past the point most modern films would cut away, how it allows grief to settle rather than rushing to resolve it, how it trusts the audience to stay engaged without constant stimulation. Those reactions, shared in late-night reaction videos, in tearful posts after a first big-screen viewing, unquiet admissions that a fictional friendship made someone cry harder than most real-life moments, prove that the hunger for stories told with this level of care has not vanished. It has simply been waiting for something worthy of attention to come along and remind people what depth feels like. One of the most quietly revolutionary things about The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers is how unapologetically it embraces scale without ever letting scale eclipse intimacy. How it allows the camera to wander across vast plains and towering cliffs, yet always returns, almost magnetically, to the small, human-scale details that make the spectacle feel personal rather than distant. The way Frodo's fingers tremble as they brush the chain around his neck. The faint tremor in Sam's voice when he tries to summon stories that might lift his friend's spirit. The almost imperceptible softening around Legolas's eyes when he realizes Gimli has been wounded, but is too proud to admit it. Jackson understands that true epic storytelling isn't about overwhelming the senses with endless grandeur. It's about using that grandeur as a frame to make the ordinary extraordinary, so that when we see thousands of orcs swarming up the Deeping Wall, we are simultaneously aware of the single Rohan soldier whose torch is shaking in his hand. Or when the Ents finally begin their inexorable march, we feel not just the thunder of ancient footsteps, but the fragile hope in Merry's face as he watches centuries of apathy give way to something like wrath. This constant shuttling between the cosmic and the close-up creates a rhythm that mirrors life itself. Moments of overwhelming vastness interrupted by the sharp, immediate sting of individual fear, love, exhaustion, or resolve. And it is precisely that rhythm that makes the film feel so alive, so breathing, so unwilling to let any character become merely a piece on a chessboard, no matter how large the board becomes. The extended edition deepens this interplay in ways that feel almost devotional, granting extra minutes to scenes that might otherwise have been trimmed for tempo, yet which, when allowed to unfold at their natural length, reveal layers of texture and truth that transform our understanding of what follows. Consider the longer version of the moment when Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli first glimpse the white-clad figure on the hill after their pursuit through Fangorn. Instead of a quick reveal, the extended cut lingers on the group's wary approach, the way sunlight catches on the stranger's robes and turns them blinding, the slow dawning recognition in each face. Aragorn's hand tightening on his sword hilt, then gradually relaxing, Legolas's sharp intake of breath, Gimli's gruff mutter turning into something closer to reverence. And in those suspended seconds, we are given time to feel the miracle of it. The sheer improbability that hope could return in such a literal, radiant form after everything seemed lost. Or look at the expanded farewell between Theoden and the people of Edoras before the evacuation. More villagers are shown gathering what little they can carry, children clinging to parents, where elderly men and women helping one another onto carts, and Theoden moving among them not as a distant monarch, but as a man who knows many of their names, offering quiet words of reassurance that carry the weight of someone who has only just remembered how to lead with heart instead of command. These added breaths do not slow the story. They oxygenate it, filling the lungs of the narrative so that when the pace inevitably quickens again, the contrast feels earned. The release of tension all the more cathartic because we have been allowed to inhabit the build-up fully. Behind the lens, the commitment to physical authenticity reached almost obsessive levels in service of that same intimacy within immensity. The Deeping Wall itself was engineered with real load-bearing stone and timber, so that when sections gave way under the battering ram or explosives, the collapse had genuine momentum and debris patterns, No simulated physics could replicate the way chunks of masonry tumbled with unpredictable weight, sending up clouds of dust that caught the torchlight and turned the air thick and choking in a way that forced performers to react instinctively rather than choreographically. Costumes were padded and layered not just for appearance but for realistic restriction. Male shirts hung heavy enough to pull at shoulders after hours of wear. Leather boots were broken in until they creaked authentically with every step. Cloaks were soaked and muddied repeatedly, so they clung and dragged in precisely the way wet wool does in reality. Even the horses' tack and saddles were period-accurate reproductions that creaked and jingled with movement, adding another subtle auditory layer that helped actors stay grounded in a believable physical world even amid the most fantastical sequences. All of this tactile detail serves one purpose: to make sure that when a character reaches out to steady another, or wipes rain and blood from their eyes, or grips a sword hilt until knuckles whiten, the gesture carries the full freight of exhaustion, pain, determination, and fragile humanity that no amount of digital polish can fake. And today, well into 2026, the film's refusal to compromise on that humanity continues to resonate in ways that surprise even those who have loved it for decades. Fresh audiences, many of whom grew up on faster narratives, find themselves unexpectedly moved by its willingness to dwell, to let a single tear track down a cheek without cutting away, to allow silence to do the heavy lifting after a devastating loss, rather than rushing to fill it with music or dialogue. Online discussions now frequently circle back to how radical it feels in the current landscape. A blockbuster that trusts its viewers to sit with discomfort, with ambiguity, with the slow burn of grief and the even slower burn of hope rekindling. It has become, in a strange way, a quiet act of resistance against the idea that attention spans have permanently shrunk. Proof that when something is worth watching, it can still command 3 hours or 4 without apology. And that people will still gather in darkened rooms to share a collective experience that demands presence rather than passive scrolling. The Two Towers reminds us that some stories are not meant to be efficient. They are meant to be thorough enough to change how we see loyalty, how we measure courage, how we understand the stubborn, beautiful insistence of life to keep going even when the night seems endless. Perhaps the most enduring gift of The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers lies in its quiet insistence that heroism is rarely loud or solitary. It is almost always communal, incremental, and woven from countless acts of ordinary decency performed under extraordinary pressure. Why acts so small they might pass unnoticed, except that the camera lingers just long enough to make sure we notice them. The way a wounded soldier is dragged to cover not by a single mighty rescuer, but by 2 or 3 companions who refuse to leave him behind even as arrows whistle past, in the way Eowyn kneels beside frightened children in the caves beneath Helm's Deep and speaks softly to them in a voice that trembles only slightly while the world above shakes with war, the way Merry and Pippin, tiny against the towering bark of Fangorn, keep talking to Treebeard long after any reasonable person would have given up. Their persistence not born of strategy, but of a stubborn belief that if they keep showing up, keep explaining why this matters, something ancient and immovable might finally stir. And Jackson never lets these moments feel secondary to the spectacle. He frames them with the same reverence he gives to charging cavalry or crumbling walls, so that we understand the true architecture of victory is built as much from these fragile human connections as from swords or spells. The unspoken pact that says, "I will not let you fall alone. I will carry your weight when yours becomes too heavy. I will keep speaking your name into the silence until the silence answers back." It is a film that knows despair is contagious, but so is courage, and it chooses, scene after scene, to show the latter spreading slowly, person to person, like dawn creeping across a shadowed valley, until what began as isolated flickers becomes a light strong enough to push back the night. The extended cut honors this philosophy by giving even more space to the slow contagion of hope, allowing sequences to unfold with a patience that mirrors the very process it depicts. In the longer version of the Entmoot's aftermath, for instance, we see more of the Ent's hesitant first steps toward action, not a sudden roar of agreement, but a series of low, rumbling consultations that stretch across what feels like hours in their timescale, branches shifting, moss-covered faces turning toward one another in deliberation so grave it borders on ritual. Merry and Pippin watch from below, small and anxious, yet refusing to interrupt, trusting that their words have planted a seed even if the growth is glacial. And when the first ant finally takes a deliberate stride forward, the camera holds on that single movement long enough for us to feel its monumental weight, the way the Earth itself seems to shift under the pressure of a decision that has waited centuries to be made. Another gift is the extended glimpse into the Rohirrim's night before the battle. More time spent among the common folk as they sharpen spears, mend armor with shaking hands, share bread and quiet stories around small fires, their faces lit by flickering orange against the vast black of the mountains. We hear fragments of lullabies sung to restless children, see old friends clasp forearms in wordless farewell, witness a young rider teaching an even younger one how to hold a sword properly, not with bravado but with gentle correction and encouragement. And in these intimate, unhurried exchanges, the film reminds us that armies are not faceless masses, but collections of individuals each carrying their own private fears and loves, each choosing in this moment to stand together not because victory is certain, but because standing apart would be unbearable. The physical world the filmmakers created reinforces that same truth at every turn. The sets were not mere stages, but environments that imposed real conditions on everyone working within them, so that when actors spoke of cold, fatigue, or the ache of heavy gear, they were describing sensations they had actually lived through rather than imagined. The mud of Helms Deep was real mud, churned by hundreds of boots and gallons of artificial rain, thick enough to pull at legs and slow every step, and forcing performers to adjust their balance and breathing in ways that translated directly into the weary, grounded movement we see on screen. No amount of rehearsal could simulate the way wet earth sucks at boots or how cold seeps through layers until joints stiffen and breath clouds in the torchlight. The armor for the Rohirrim was crafted with intentional weight and restriction so that lifting a shield or swinging a sword required genuine effort, leaving shoulders rounded and breaths short after prolonged takes. And that visible strain became part of the performance, turning every defensive stance or desperate parry into an act of will rather than effortless choreography. Even the soundscape was built from real acoustic spaces, echoes captured in actual stone corridors, the metallic scrape of blades on real shields recorded on location, the low moan of wind through narrow passes that carried across wide shots so that the environment itself seemed to speak, to breathe, to respond to the character's presence rather than remain a passive backdrop. In the landscape of 2026, where so much entertainment is engineered for instant gratification and endless distraction, The Two Towers stands as a quiet, stubborn reminder that depth and duration are not obstacles to engagement, but pathways to it. That when a story trusts its audience enough to move slowly, to let silence hold meaning, to allow emotion to build gradually rather than detonate on cue, people will still gather, still watch, still feel the impact ripple outward long after the screen goes dark. Newcomers to the film often describe the experience as almost shocking in its sincerity. No winking self-awareness. No constant undercut of humor to deflect vulnerability. Just a straightforward belief that these characters and their struggles deserve our full attention, our patience, our willingness to sit with uncertainty until clarity arrives on its own terms. That trust has proven remarkably durable. Reaction threads and late-night viewings continue to multiply, with people half a generation removed from the original release, discovering that the same quiet moments, Sam's hand on Frodo's shoulder, Theoden's first clear breath after years of fog, Treebeard's final, earth-shaking step, can still stop the heart and restart it stronger. What continues to make The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, feel so inexhaustibly alive, even after all these years and all these viewings, is its profound refusal to treat any character as expendable background or any emotion as disposable filler. Every soul on screen, no matter how briefly glimpsed, is granted the dignity of an inner life that ripples outward into the larger tapestry. So that when we see a lone Rohan woman clutching her child's hand as the evacuation wagons roll away, we sense not just fear, but the full weight of a life upended. Or when an Uruk-hai warrior pauses for a split second before charging, we catch the flicker of something almost like recognition that he too is part of a machine he did not build and cannot stop. Or when Pippin lies awake staring at the canopy of Fangorn while the others sleep, We understand that beneath his youthful bravado lies a mind quietly reckoning with the enormity of what they have set in motion. Mao Jackson's lens never rushes past these private reckonings. It dwells in them with a tenderness that borders on reverence, letting the camera rest on a furrowed brow, a clenched jaw, a slow exhalation of breath fogging in the cold night air, so that we are reminded again and again that the fate of Middle-earth is not decided solely by rings or wizards or kings, but by the cumulative choices of beings who are afraid, who are tired, who are grieving, who are hopeful anyway. Choices made in the half-light of dawn, in the press of bodies in a crowded cave, in the momentary stillness before a horn sounds, and everything erupts again. This insistence on the primacy of the individual amid the colossal makes the film feel less like spectacle and more like witness. We are not merely watching events unfold. We are being asked to stand beside these people, to feel the cold seep into their bones, the ache in their legs from endless marching, the sudden sharp pang when a familiar voice calls out across the din and might never call again. And in that shared vulnerability, the story transcends fantasy to become something achingly recognizable, something that speaks directly to whatever part of us still believes that showing up, one weary step after another, is the truest form of defiance against oblivion. The extended edition's deepest generosity lies in how it carves out even more of these private, unguarded spaces, trusting that the audience will stay with the characters through uncertainty rather than demanding immediate resolution or forward momentum. And one such expansion comes in the longer treatment of the Rohirrim riders' approach to Helm's Deep after the warg attack. Instead of cutting swiftly to arrival, we linger with Theoden and his company as they crest ridge after ridge, the camera sweeping low across their faces to catch the exhaustion etched there, the hollow cheeks, the dirt-streaked brows, the way eyes that have seen too much still scan the horizon with stubborn vigilance. And in those extra minutes, we absorb the cumulative toll of retreat, the way pride and duty war with the bone-deep desire to rest, making their eventual stand feel not like a scripted heroic pivot, but like the last deliberate act of a people who have run out of places to run, yet refuse to run further. And another lies in the added depth given to Faramir's men as they escort Frodo and Sam toward Osgiliath. More time spent among the Rangers themselves, their quiet conversations about home and lost comrades, the way they handle their captives with rough courtesy rather than cruelty. The subtle shifts in posture when Faramir speaks of his brother or his father, revealing a company that is loyal, yet quietly fractured. Men who fight for Gondor while privately questioning whether Gondor still fights for anything worth saving. These longer passages do not pad the runtime, they saturate it with humanity, letting us feel the texture of lives lived parallel to the main quest, lives that are no less consequential for being less central, so that when the paths finally converge, the collision carries the full freight of separate journeys colliding, and separate hopes and doubts and loyalties meeting in a single fragile moment of alliance. The physicality the production demanded from everyone involved remains one of its most quietly radical choices. Sets were built not for convenience, but for consequence, so that climbing a siege ladder meant hauling real weight up uneven rungs slick with artificial rain, so that standing guard on the wall meant bracing against actual wind machines that whipped cloaks and hair and drove cold deep into muscle, so that every prolonged take in the mud or the dark or the smoke left performers genuinely spent. Their breathing ragged, their movements heavier with each passing hour, and that authentic depletion seeped into the frame as something irreplaceable. Eyes that no longer needed to act weary because they were weary. Voices that cracked not from direction but from hours of shouting over manufactured thunder. Hands that trembled not from performance but from gripping weapons too long in the wet and cold. This commitment extended even to the smallest environmental details. The caves beneath Helm's Deep were constructed with real stone floors that stayed chill to the touch, real dripping water channels that kept the air damp and heavy, real low ceilings that forced taller actors to stoop slightly so that the sense of confinement was not simulated but felt, turning every scene of huddled families or wounded soldiers into a visceral reminder that refuge is never comfortable when the world outside is trying to tear itself apart. And in February of 2026, as the calendar keeps turning and new stories crowd the horizon, and the Two Towers still holds a mirror up to whatever moment we happen to be living through. Its refusal to hurry past grief, its insistence that hope must be rebuilt brick by brick rather than conjured in a flash, its quiet assertion that community is forged in the crucible of shared hardship, rather than in easy consensus. Continue to strike chords that feel freshly tuned to the present. People watching it now, whether on home screens during quiet evenings or in theaters that still occasionally revive it for special screenings, often emerge changed in small but noticeable ways. A little more patient with their own doubts, a little more willing to reach out when someone else is struggling, a little more convinced that persistence, even when it looks like nothing more than refusing to stop walking, can still shift the course of things in ways no one predicted. It is a film that does not shout its lessons. It whispers them over and over until they settle deep enough to take root. The quiet genius of The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers lies in how it turns absence itself into a living presence. The absence of the full fellowship, the absence of safety, the absence of certainty, the absence of any guarantee that tomorrow will be kinder than today. And instead of hurrying to fill those voids with noise or easy answers, the film lets them ache openly, lets them shape every decision and every glance until the story feels less like a quest narrative and more like a meditation on what it means to keep moving when so much has already been taken away. We watch Frodo and Sam press forward through landscapes that grow increasingly hostile and barren, their conversations growing shorter and more strained as the ring's weight settles deeper into bone and mind. Yet Sam never stops offering small, practical proofs of care. A piece of lembas bread broken carefully in half, a cloak pulled tighter against the wind, a voice that keeps speaking even when Frodo can barely answer. And in those tiny, repeated gestures, we see the slow, stubborn construction of a lifeline that has nothing to do with power or prophecy, and everything to do with one person deciding that another person's survival is worth every remaining ounce of his own strength. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli's pursuit through Rohan becomes its own kind of absence-filled journey. Three companions who have lost their fourth, their fifth, their sixth, yet refuse to let the trail go cold. They're tracking not just a hunt for orcs, but a refusal to let separation become permanent. Their banter growing quieter and more purposeful as miles accumulate and hope thins, until every exchanged look carries the unspoken understanding that they are holding the fellowship together by sheer continuity of movement, by the simple, relentless act of putting one foot in front of the other across an emptying world. Even Theoden's arc is defined by absence, the absence of his own will under Wormtongue's spell, the absence of his son's life, the absence of a kingdom unscarred, and his slow return to himself is portrayed not as a sudden blaze of glory, but as a painful reassembly. First, the clouded eyes clearing, then the voice finding strength. Then the hand reaching for a sword that feels foreign after so long, each step forward shadowed by the knowledge of everything already lost, making his decision to ride to war less a triumphant reclaiming of power, and more a deliberate choice to live in the presence of grief rather than let grief dictate the end of his story. The extended edition deepens these themes of absence and persistence by granting extra time to the spaces between action, letting us sit longer with characters who are learning to carry what cannot be returned. In the fuller version of The Hobbit's crossing of the Eamon Muil, for instance, we see more of their physical and emotional attrition, the repeated slips on wet rock, the growing silence between them as fatigue erodes words. The way Gollum's presence shifts from threat to reluctant necessity, and in those prolonged moments of struggle we feel the slow erosion of certainty, the way the ring's influence works not through dramatic possession, but through steady, grinding diminishment, until even the landscape itself seems to conspire in making every forward step feel like defiance against a world that wants them to stop. Another extended passage lingers on the evacuation of Edoras itself. More shots of families loading carts in the gray pre-dawn. More time spent on the elderly who must leave homes they have known for lifetimes. More quiet exchanges between neighbors who are saying goodbye without knowing if they will ever say hello again. And through it all, Theoden moves among them like a man relearning how to bear responsibility. His face a map of regret and resolve. His voice steady when he speaks to them, yet privately cracking when he thinks no one is watching, so that the departure feels not like a prelude to battle, but like the true beginning of loss made visible and shared. These added stretches do not dilute tension. They amplify it by showing us exactly what is at stake. Not abstract kingdoms or rings, but breakfast tables left empty, children's toys abandoned in haste, hands that once clasped in greeting now reaching only for what can be carried away. And in making those absences tangible, the film turns every subsequent act of resistance into something fiercely personal, something worth every drop of blood and every sleepless night. The craftsmanship that sustains this emotional realism is rooted in a production ethos that treated environment as co-star rather than backdrop. The plains of Rohan were shot during real seasonal shifts, so that wind-whipped grass and lowering clouds carried authentic seasonal melancholy. The forests of Fangorn used actual ancient woodland locations augmented with practical sets to preserve the sense of deep time and living greenness that digital foliage so often flattens. The interiors of Meduseld built with high, timbered ceilings and long, echoing halls that gave every spoken word a natural reverb, turning even ordinary dialogue into something that felt carved from the architecture itself. Performers were encouraged to stay in costume and accent between takes so that the rhythm of speech and gesture remained unbroken. So that when cameras rolled again, the characters had not reset, but simply continued breathing, thinking, aching in the same unbroken line, resulting in performances that feel lived rather than acted, where exhaustion is not feigned but carried over from previous hours, where a character's sudden laugh or sudden silence arrives with the surprise and inevitability of real human response. And as we sit here in the early months of 2026, with the world still turning faster than most of us can comfortably keep up, The Two Towers continues to offer something close to medicine, a reminder that it is permissible, necessary even, to move slowly when the stakes are high, to let grief have its full measure before demanding forward motion, to value the quiet accumulation of small loyalties over flashy heroics. To believe that absence does not erase connection, but can sometimes make it sharper, more essential, more fiercely defended. People who encounter it now often speak of emerging with a strange, quiet resolve, not to conquer the world in a single bound, but to keep showing up tomorrow, to keep extending a hand, to keep speaking hope into silences that feel permanent, because they have seen on screen what it looks like when a few weary souls decide that permanence is negotiable after all, the deepest, most abiding power of the Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers emerges from its unflinching portrayal of what it actually costs to remain human in a world that is doing everything it can to strip humanity away. The slow, grinding erosion of trust, the way hope can shrink to the size of a single ember carried in cupped hands through endless dark, the peculiar intimacy that grows between people who have no one else left to turn to, and therefore must turn to each other with a rawness that politeness and distance would never allow. We see it in the way Frodo's gaze sometimes drifts inward, away from Sam, not out of rejection, but because the ring has begun to carve a private hell inside him that even the closest companion cannot fully enter. Yet Sam keeps pace anyway, keeps talking about gardens and potatoes and ordinary mornings as though those memories are strong enough to tether Frodo back to the person he used to be before the weight settled on his shoulders. We see it in the gradual, almost imperceptible thawing between Legolas and Gimli, where initial suspicion gives way not to grand declarations of friendship, but to small and practical accommodations, a shared watch on a cold ridge, a quiet admission of admiration for the other's skill, a hand offered to pull the other up after a fall, until their differences, once barriers, become the very texture of a bond that neither could have foreseen and neither would now willingly relinquish. We see it in Eowyn standing at the edge of the gathered host, watching the riders depart for what might be their final charge, her posture rigid with the effort of holding herself together while everything inside screams to ride with them, her face a silent map of longing, resentment, and the fierce determination to find purpose in the place she has been left, turning absence into agency through sheer force of will. Jackson never sentimentalizes these transformations. He photographs them plainly, letting natural light catch the sweat and dirt on skin, letting wind tug at hair and cloaks, letting silence stretch until it becomes almost a character of its own, so that we feel the real labor involved in choosing connection over isolation, choosing tomorrow over surrender, choosing another person's survival as the hill you are willing to die on even when your own strength is nearly spent. The extended edition's most affecting expansions are those that refuse to hurry past the labor of that choosing, that give us time to witness the invisible work of holding a self together when the world is pulling it apart piece by piece. In the longer cut, The sequence of Aragorn's solitary watch after the warg attack stretches further. More time alone on the ridge as dawn bleeds slowly across the plain. I have more shots of him sitting motionless with Andúril across his knees, the sword's hilt resting against his forehead in a posture that is half prayer, half exhaustion. The camera circling slowly to catch the play of first light on his face, and the way his eyes, red-rimmed, shadowed, still search the horizon for any sign that the others made it through the night. It is a scene without dialogue, without music swelling to tell us what to feel. Yet in its quiet duration, we absorb the full measure of what it means to lead when leadership feels like abandonment, to carry the hope of a people while your own hope flickers dangerously low. Another such gift is the extended portrayal of the women, children, and elderly gathered in the glittering caves. More moments of ordinary life persisting under siege. Mothers braiding daughters' hair with trembling fingers. Old men telling half-remembered tales to restless boys. A young girl offering water to a wounded rider with a seriousness far beyond her years. And through these small, stubborn continuations of care, we understand that defense is not only about swords at the wall, but about preserving the texture of daily existence below it, about keeping stories and songs and tenderness alive even when the sky is full of arrows and the ground shakes with approaching doom. These added stretches do not delay the climax. They make it matter more, because we have seen exactly what is being defended, not abstract ideals of freedom or honor, but the right to wake up tomorrow and find the people you love still breathing, still laughing, still remembering who they were before the shadow fell. The production itself mirrored that same stubborn persistence. Locations were chosen not for convenience, but for their capacity to impose authentic hardship, so that when the company rode across the plains of Rohan, the wind was real wind whipping across open grassland, carrying dust into eyes and throats, forcing riders to squint and shield their faces in ways that no studio fan could replicate. When the Ents were filmed among actual ancient trees, the actors playing Merry and Pippin had to shout upward through branches that filtered light in dappled, shifting patterns, their voices growing hoarse from repeated takes in the damp. A mossy air that carried the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves, grounding every line in a physical reality that bled into performance. Even the battle choreography was rehearsed in full costume and armor, under the same punishing conditions the characters faced. Hours of rain, mud, cold, noise, so that by the time cameras rolled, the movements had acquired the ragged, instinctive quality of survival rather than dance. Every swing of a sword carrying the accumulated fatigue of the day, every shout cracked from overuse, every stumble authentic because legs really were trembling from exertion and cold. This refusal to fake the toll created a texture of authenticity that no post-production effect can manufacture. Faces that look genuinely drained, breaths that come short and visible in the chill. Hands that fumble slightly when reaching for a fallen comrade because fingers are numb and slick with rain and blood. And here in the lengthening days of February 2026, when so many stories rush to conclude or distract or resolve, The Two Towers remains a patient, almost defiant counterpoint. A film that says it is all right to linger in uncertainty, that healing and alliance and meaning do not arrive on schedule, that the work of staying connected, of keeping hope from guttering out, of refusing to let absence win is lifelong labor rather than a single dramatic act. Viewers who come to it fresh today often describe a peculiar after effect. Not exhilaration so much as a quiet steadiness, a renewed willingness to sit with discomfort instead of fleeing it, to offer presence instead of solutions, to believe that showing up consistently, and even imperfectly, even exhaustedly, is itself a form of power that the world cannot easily erase. It is a film that does not promise easy dawn. It promises only that if enough people keep walking toward it together, dawn will eventually arrive, bruised and weary but real. One of the most quietly shattering truths that The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers keeps revealing on every return is how thoroughly it understands that courage is not the opposite of fear, but the decision to act while fear is still screaming inside you. The way it shows us characters who are terrified yet keep moving anyway, not because they have conquered their terror, but because they have decided that something else matters more than the terror itself. Something fragile and worth protecting, even if protecting it means walking straight into the jaws of what scares them most. We see it in Frodo's slow, deliberate steps forward through the marshes when every instinct screams to turn back, his body trembling under the ring's pull, yet his feet refusing to stop because turning back would mean betraying the trust Sam has placed in him, betraying the memory of Bilbo, betraying the small green corner of the Shire that still lives in his mind like a fading dream he is determined not to let die. We see it in Theoden riding out from Edoras at the head of his diminished host, his face pale and set with the knowledge that this charge may be the last thing he ever does. Yet he rides because the alternative, letting Saruman's shadow swallow his people without resistance, would be a betrayal far worse than death. We see it in the way ordinary men and women of Rohan stand on the deeping wall with farm tools and hunting bows in hands that have never held them in true war, their breaths coming short and fast, their eyes wide with the animal certainty that they might not see another sunrise. Yet they stand, because the people huddled in the caves behind them are counting on that line not to break, because the children who still remember lullabies need someone to keep singing them tomorrow. Jackson photographs these moments without fanfare or slow-motion heroics. He lets the camera stay steady on faces that are openly afraid, on hands that shake when they grip a weapon, and on eyes that dart toward escape routes they will never take, so that we feel the full human cost of every choice to stay, every refusal to run, every silent vow that says, "Not today, not while I still breathe." It is a film that knows bravery is rarely clean or triumphant in the moment. It is sweaty, nauseous, trembling, second-guessing, and yet it shows us that those very sensations are the proof that the choice is real, that the heart is still beating fiercely enough to override the body's wiser, safer instincts. The extended edition's most valuable contributions are often the ones that give us more time inside that trembling hesitation, letting us witness the exact instant when fear almost wins and then does not, when the scale tips not through sudden inspiration but through the slow accumulation of reasons to keep going. In the longer cut, the approach to the fords of Isen Aftermath lingers further. More time spent riding in silence among Theoden's scouts as they crest the ridge and see the carnage below. More shots of riders reining in their horses while faces drain of color. More moments of Theoden dismounting to walk among the fallen, his hand brushing a dead boy's hair from his brow, his voice catching when he recognizes a neighbor, his shoulders bowing under the sudden weight of responsibility he has only just reclaimed. And in that extended quiet, we feel the precise moment when grief could have broken him entirely, when retreat would have been the easiest path, yet something inside him straightens instead, not with a surge of anger or glory, but with the grim, exhausted realization that if he turns away now, the bodies below will have died for nothing, and that the living still need him to choose the harder road. Another such sequence expands the night in the glittering caves. More time among the women and children as they wait out the battle above. More shots of mothers holding infants close while distant booms shake dust from the ceiling. More exchanges between elderly women who have seen wars before and younger ones who have not. Their voices low and steady as they pass stories back and forth like shared blankets. Tales of past survivals, of husbands who came home, of children who grew up despite everything. And through these whispered continuities, we see how courage can look like storytelling when there is nothing else to do. How holding a child's hand and murmuring, "It will pass, it always passes," becomes its own form of resistance. Its own refusal to let fear be the last sound anyone hears in the dark. The production team's devotion to making those fears and choices feel physically undeniable remains staggering. The Warg-attack scenes were shot across real rocky terrain at golden hour, so that the low sun threw long, jagged shadows that heightened every leap and scramble, forcing actors to navigate genuine uneven ground while horses thundered past at speed, their hooves kicking up real dust that stung eyes and throats and left everyone coughing between takes in a way that added authentic desperation to every shouted line and frantic dodge. The Helms' deep interior sets incorporated actual water channels carved into the stone floors, so that when rain leaked through the cracks above it, pooled and ran in cold rivulets across the flagstones. And chilling bare feet and soaking hems, turning every huddled group into a tableau of genuine discomfort that no artificial mist or spray could replicate. Even the smallest props carried consequence. Lembas bread was baked in dense, chewy loaves that had to be torn with effort, so that when Sam broke pieces for Frodo, the tearing sound and the slight resistance in his fingers were real, grounding the act of sharing in the tactile reality of hunger and care rather than symbolic gesture. And as February 2026 unfolds with its own particular weight, news cycles that never pause, days that blur into one another, the quiet pressure to keep performing competence even when everything inside feels frayed, The Two Towers continues to function almost like a companion who does not speak, but simply sits beside you. I'm reminding you that it is permissible to be afraid and still act, to be exhausted and still reach out, to be uncertain and still choose the next right thing even when the path ahead looks like nothing but shadow. People who watch it now often carry away a strange, gentle permission. Permission to feel the fear without letting it decide. Permission to let silence be part of courage rather than a sign of weakness. Permission to measure progress not in grand victories, but in the stubborn fact that you woke up and tried again today. It is a film that does not erase difficulty. It honors it, walks through it with you, and emerges on the other side still holding your hand. But the enduring heartbeat of The Lord of the Rings. The Two Towers pulses most powerfully in its recognition that true strength is never solitary or self-sufficient. It is relational, interdependent, fragile, and therefore infinitely more precious than any solitary power could ever be. A film that quietly insists that the mightiest forces in any world are the ones we cannot wield alone. The ones that require another person's presence, another person's belief, another person's refusal to let you vanish into whatever darkness is trying to claim you. We feel it in the way Sam's entire being becomes oriented around Frodo, not in subservience, but in fierce, voluntary guardianship. His every word and action a deliberate tether thrown across the widening chasm the ring is carving between them. His stories of the Shire not mere nostalgia but lifelines he keeps casting even when Frodo's responses grow fainter, even when the light in Frodo's eyes dims, because Sam has decided that as long as he himself can remember the taste of strawberries or the smell of rain on Hobbiton grass, he will keep reminding Frodo of it too. Keep holding the memory alive until Frodo can hold it again himself. We feel it in the slow, almost reluctant forging of Legolas and Gimli's companionship, where every shared glance or dry quip is a small bridge built across centuries of inherited enmity, where their growing trust is measured not in grand oaths, but in the simple fact that when one stumbles, the other is already reaching without needing to be asked. When one's arrow flies true, the other's axe follows without hesitation. Until what began as wary tolerance has become something neither could name at the start, yet both now defend with their lives. We feel it in Theoden's restoration, not as a solitary wizard's spell, but as a collective act of witness. Gandalf's voice, Aragorn's steadying hand, the hall full of silent Rohirrim who refuse to look away while their king fights to reclaim himself, so that when Theoden finally stands tall again, it is not his victory alone but theirs, a shared reclaiming that ripples outward to every man and woman who has been waiting for permission to remember their own worth. Jackson frames these interconnections with a tenderness that never feels manipulative. Close shots that capture the micro-expressions of recognition, of relief, of sudden understanding. And wide shots that place characters within landscapes so vast they seem swallowed, yet never truly alone, because another figure is always visible in the distance, always moving in the same direction, always refusing to let separation become severance. The film teaches us, without ever preaching, that isolation is the real weapon of any shadow, that the greatest defense is not armor or fortress, but the stubborn, daily choice to remain in relationship, to keep seeing, keep hearing, keep responding, even when everything urges withdrawal, even when the cost of staying connected feels higher than the cost of letting go. The extended edition's most luminous editions are those that stretch these relational threads further, giving us time to watch bonds form and hold under pressures that would snap lesser ones in an instant. In the longer cut, not the night ride of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli after losing the Hobbit's trail gains more quiet moments of mutual reliance, more time around their small fire where exhaustion makes voices drop and guards lower, where Gimli admits, almost in a mutter, that he never expected to find common ground with an elf, where Legolas responds not with triumph, but with a simple nod and the offer of his cloak against the chill, where Aragorn watches them both and allows himself a rare, unguarded smile because he sees in their tentative trust the same stubborn continuity he is trying to preserve for the entire broken fellowship. Another such expansion deepens the scene inside Helm's Deep as the battle looms. More time spent among the defenders as they take their posts, more overheard fragments of conversation between fathers and sons. Between old comrades who fought together in peacetime skirmishes, between strangers who now share a wall and a common fate. The way a veteran quietly corrects a boy's grip on a spear. The way a woman passes water skins along the line with steady hands and encouraging words. The way eyes meet across gaps in the stone and hold for a beat longer than necessary, conveying everything that words cannot in the face of what is coming. These extended passages do not merely lengthen the film, they lengthen our understanding of what it means to stand together. Not as an abstract ideal, but as a series of specific, costly choices made by people who could choose otherwise yet do not. People who decide that the risk of losing one another is greater than the risk of standing side by side against the storm. The production's devotion to making those choices feel physically and emotionally undeniable is etched into every frame. The warg's attack was filmed across real broken ground at dusk, so that lengthening shadows and fading light forced performers to strain their eyes and quicken their reactions in genuine low visibility. Horses and riders moving in coordinated chaos that left dust clouds hanging in the air long after each take. Throats raw from shouting over the thunder of hooves and the snarls of trained animals, creating a visceral sense of disorientation and urgency that no controlled set piece could match. The glittering cave's interiors were carved from actual limestone caverns, augmented with practical sets, so that the chill of stone seeped upward through boots and the damp air clung to clothing and skin, and turning every huddled conversation or moment of comfort into something that had to be fought for against the environment itself. Every embrace or shared blanket carrying the extra weight of genuine physical relief. Even the score's placement respected this relational gravity. Shore's themes do not dominate every scene, but often withdraw during the most intimate exchanges, letting natural sound, the crackle of a small fire, the distant drip of water, the low murmur of voices, carry the emotional load, so that when music finally returns, it feels like an earned release rather than an imposed emotion, like the world itself sighing in recognition of a bond that is held against all odds. And deep into February 2026, when so many forces pull us toward disconnection, endless notifications, fractured attention, the quiet temptation to retreat into solitary screens, The Two Towers stands as a steady, almost gentle rebuke, a reminder that relationship is not a luxury, but a necessity, that the deepest strength we can access is borrowed strength, shared strength, the kind that says, "I cannot do this alone, but because you are here, I will try anyway." People who sit with it now often carry away something subtle, yet lasting, a renewed impulse to check on someone who has gone quiet, a willingness to stay in a difficult conversation a few minutes longer, a small, private decision to keep showing up, even when showing up feels like nothing more than breathing. It is a film that does not demand grand gestures. It celebrates the quiet ones, the ones that happen in the middle of the night, in the middle of doubt, in the middle of everything falling apart. And says that those are enough, more than enough, to keep the world turning toward morning. Perhaps the most quietly revolutionary aspect of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, is how it portrays the act of remembering itself as a form of resistance, as a deliberate, almost sacred labor against the forces that would erase both the past and the possibility of any future worth having. How characters cling to memory, not out of nostalgia or sentimentality, but because memory is the last weapon left when everything else has been stripped away, the one thing no orc, no spell, no overwhelming darkness can fully destroy unless the individual first surrenders it. We see Frodo reaching, again and again, for fragments of the Shire that are slipping further out of reach. The taste of Bilbo's seed cake, the sound of bells on a summer morning, the smell of wood smoke curling from hobbit holes at evening. Each recollection a small, fierce act of defiance against the ring's attempt to reduce him to nothing but hunger and shadow. Each memory Sam helps him hold onto, becoming a living bridge back to who he was before the journey began. Proof that even when the present feels like an endless gray plain, the past still exists somewhere intact and waiting to be reclaimed. We see it in Gandalf's gentle insistence that Aragorn remember who he is, not just the name Strider or the title Elisar, but the lineage of Númenor, the blood of kings who once stood against greater darknesses than this, the quiet stories of ancestors who chose duty over ease and paid dearly for it. Each reminder delivered not as command but as invitation. As though Gandalf understands that memory is the soil in which courage can still grow, even when the ground above seems scorched and barren. We see it in the Rohirrim, as they gather in the Golden Hall or stand watch on the walls, older voices recounting battles long past, songs half forgotten yet still sung under the breath, names of the fallen spoken aloud so they are not lost to time. Each recitation a refusal to let Saruman's machines and fires erase the continuity of a people. A way of saying that as long as someone still remembers the songs and the stories, the culture itself has not died, no matter how many riders fall or how many halls burn. Jackson treats these acts of remembrance with extraordinary care. He lets the camera linger on faces softened by sudden recall, on eyes that grow distant for a moment before sharpening again with renewed purpose, on hands that unconsciously trace old scars or fiddle with heirloom rings while memory does its quiet work, so that we understand remembrance is not passive. It is active, costly, sometimes painful. Yet it is also the thread that keeps individuals and entire peoples from unraveling completely when the present offers only loss. The extended edition's richest gifts are often found in these acts of deliberate recall, in the extra moments it grants to let characters, and therefore us, sit longer with what has been lost and what must still be preserved. In the longer cut, the scene of Gandalf speaking to Aragorn in the dim light of Edoras gains more breathing room, more time for Gandalf to recount fragments of ancient Númenórean lore, not grand historical sweep, but intimate, almost personal details. The way a certain king once wept openly at the grave of his son, the way another refused to flee when the sea came calling. Stories told in a low voice that carries the weight of centuries, stories that seem to steady Aragorn's breathing, to draw his shoulders back fractionally, to remind him that the blood in his veins has carried men through worse nights than this one. And another such expansion occurs during the quiet hours before the Entmoot's decision. More time with Merry and Pippin sitting at Treebeard's feet while he murmurs half-remembered Entish verses about forests that once stretched unbroken from sea to sea, about Entwives who sang the trees into fuller life, about a time when the world was green and unscarred, verses delivered in that deep, resonant rumble that makes the ground vibrate slightly. Verses that Merry and Pippin listen to with wide eyes, absorbing not just history, but a sense of what they are fighting to protect. A glimpse of a world that existed before Saruman's axes and fires, a world they now carry in their small hobbit memories, as fiercely as any ancient Ent carries it in his bark and roots. These longer recollections do not slow the narrative, they anchor it, and reminding us that the present conflict is not happening in a vacuum, but in direct confrontation with everything that has come before. That every choice to fight or to stand or to keep walking is also a choice to honor what memory still holds safe. The production's commitment to making memory feel tangible extended even to the smallest sensory details. The scent of wood smoke and thatch in the Golden Hall was achieved with real fires kept burning low during takes, so that the air carried authentic warmth and faint char, helping actors slip more naturally into recollections of hearth and home. The lembas was deliberately made dry and flavorless, so that when characters spoke of better food, the contrast between what they held and what they remembered felt physically acute, sharpening the ache of absence. Much the sound of distant horns or the low chant of Rohirric songs was recorded in actual open landscapes, so that echoes carried naturally across valleys, lending every invocation of the past a haunting, almost physical reach that seemed to travel through the very air of the scene. These choices turned memory from abstract concept into something you could almost taste, hear, smell, touch, something that lived in the body as much as in the mind, making every act of remembrance a full sensory act of defiance against forgetting. And as February 19, 2026 moves through its ordinary hours, traffic sounds outside, the soft hum of daily life, the quiet pressure of whatever small or large burdens you carry today, the Two Towers remains an astonishing companion in the work of holding on to what matters. It shows us that memory is not a luxury or a weakness, but a lifeline. That remembering who we were helps us see who we might still become. That sharing a single story or a single name across the gap between people can keep both of them from disappearing entirely. Viewers who sit with it now often find themselves afterward reaching for their own memories a little more deliberately, calling an old friend, writing down a half-forgotten childhood moment, speaking a loved one's name aloud just to hear it ring in the air again. And in those small gestures, they carry forward something the film has quietly taught: that as long as memory lives in someone, nothing is ever truly lost.